day here.
That's right.
That too. Welcome to a special review session of the City Planning Commission.
Good morning. This is a special review session of the City Planning Commission in New York City. The time is 10:03 and a quorum is present. The first and only item on the agenda is a City Council modification scope determination for 273 Avenue U rezoning. And the modification proposed by City Council was the elimination of the MIH option 2 and the addition of option 1. Staff believes that this changes in scope.
So I would ask for an assent by show of hands to send a letter to the council letting them know that it's in scope. Thank you.
Okay.
And now welcome to the City Planning Commission public hearing.
Good morning. This is the City Planning Commission public meeting held at the New York City Department of City Planning Commission hearing room on the lower level of 120 Broadway. Today is Wednesday, August 28th, 2019. As a courtesy, during the proceedings, we ask that you please turn off all cell phones and electronic devices. All speakers should fill out a speaker's card. In addition, we ask that those providing testimony please identify yourself, limit your remarks to 3 minutes, and speak clearly into the microphone. I will now call the roll. Chair Lago.
Here.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Here.
Commissioner Burney.
Here.
Commissioner Capelli. Commissioner Cerullo.
Yeah.
Commissioner De La Hoz, Commissioner Dweck,
Here.
Commissioner Edie,
Here.
Commissioner Knight,
Here.
Commissioner Levin,
Here.
Commissioner Marin,
Here.
Commissioner Ortiz, Commissioner Rampershad.
Here.
A quorum is present. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the public hearing of Wednesday, August 14th, 2019.
On the minutes, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved.
Scheduling on calendar numbers 1 to 14, we have resolutions for adoption scheduling Wednesday, September 11th, 2019, for a public hearing to be held at the New York City Planning Commission hearing room, Lower Concourse, 120 Broadway.
On the resolution, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? The resolutions are adopted.
The next part of the calendar is the report section on page 13. Borough Brooklyn, calendar number 15, Community District 3, ULIP number C190353HAK, in the matter of an application for a UDAP designation, project approval, and disposition of city-owned property concerning 776 through 780 Myrtle Avenue. For a favorable report on calendar number 15, Chair Lago.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Burney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Rampershad.
Yes.
For a favor report has been adopted on calendar number 15. Calendar number 16, Borough of Brooklyn, Community District 10, ULIP number N200008 HKK, in the matter of communication concerning the landmark designation of the Bay Ridge Parkway, Doctors Row Historic District. For adoption on calendar number 16 for referral to the City Council, Chair Lago.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Burney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Rampershad.
Yes.
Calendar number 16 has been adopted. Calendar number 17, Community District 7, Borough of Queens, ULIP number N190496 BDQ, in the matter of an application concerning the amending of the Downtown Flushing Business Improvement District. For a favorable report on calendar number 17, Chair Lago.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Burney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Rampershad. A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 17. Calendar number 18, Borough of Manhattan, Community District 1, ULIP number C190277ZSM, In the matter of an application for the grant of a special permit concerning 121 Chambers Street for favorable report on calendar number 18, Chair Lago.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Burney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Rampershad. A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 18. Calendar number 19. Borough, Staten Island, Community District 1, ULIP number N190315ZCR. In the matter of an application concerning the grant of a certification concerning 1 Sunset Hill Drive for adoption on calendar number 19, Chair Lago.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Burney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Rampershad.
Yes.
Calendar 19 has been adopted. The next part of the calendar is the public hearing section on page 17. Citywide, calendar numbers 20, 21, and 22. Community District 8 in the Bronx. Calendar number 20, C190403ZMX. Calendar number 21, N190430ZRY. Calendar number 22, N190430A-ZRY, for continued hearing in the matter of applications for zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning the Staten Island and Bronx Special District text update. Notice, a public hearing is being held by the City Planning Commission in conjunction with the above ULIP hearings to receive comments related to a draft environmental impact statement. This hearing is being held pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act and the City Environmental Quality Review.
As this is a continuation of the public hearing, we will not be having a presentation, and we will follow our traditional practice of beginning with up to 5 speakers in opposition, then speakers in favor. I would note that each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. And so we'll begin with Bruce Jacobs, who will be followed by Jody Colon.
Good morning, everybody. Bruce Jacobs, Coalition of the Rockaways, supporter of medical and religious freedom, 9/11 first responder, U.S. Navy veteran. I had questions about this thing, this park thing. Why is this now? And what's the questions to, like, what kind of jobs are going to be involved? And why are they want to get rid of some kind of planning, some kind of idea inside that already is existing. Now, in the Staten Island thing, there's an HPD thing involved. What kind of jobs are they going to be getting? Are they going to have union jobs to be fixing up this place? Are they going to be, really helping their community? Is it going to be blocking the highway? Is it going to be messing up everything? If they could answer these questions, I would be for it. But, I understand it's just to build a park, but there is people that live around there. And I do have to come here to speak to help, this neighborhood. I have a lot of, business and things in this area. A park sounds good. The Staten Island thing, with the HPD, they want to change and put a park, and then they want to put a big building. Big building must use union workers. Union apprenticeship program, that's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for the top amount. I'm asking for guys to be able to make a permanent living and a real living, not a thing that they can't live with benefits so that they could have a career and they could get by. And, that's just about it. I appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Jacobs? Thank you. Our next speaker will be Jody Colon, who will be followed by Karen Argenti.
Thank you and good morning. I'm Jody Colon, and speaking on behalf of the Friends of Spuyten Duyvil.
First, thank you for extending the hearing. I was able to get vacation time to be here. I also have used that time to read through the 1,000+ pages of the DEIS, the proposed zoning text, and all the other related documents. And I'm not liking what I'm seeing. It clearly is written for Staten Island. It doesn't really address the needs, the concerns, or the characteristics of our Bronx community. For example, in the Bronx, although only 12% of the lots are institutional, that's 50% of the land area. That's community facilities use. So many sections of the new text apply only to residential uses, not community facilities. And about 96% of those institutional lots are in base protection areas. That means they're allowed to build more and preserve less than the homeowner lots. They get 1/3 the tree credits, half the biodiversity credits, 35% lot coverage instead of 25%, 5,000 square feet enlargements as of right. That's just not right for the Bronx SNAD. And I don't think it's right for city planning either. It allows more projects to skip community review when we're your best and most vested resource. There's many more people like me who spend hundreds of hours reviewing documents and providing comments. And about those documents, 87 pages of zoning text for what amounts to about 7 applications a year in the Bronx SNAD, that's kind of excessive. I don't understand, maybe you could just apply the current science and use your discretionary powers to determine whether they make the findings or not. That would keep you cutting edge, and you wouldn't have to change the text when science changes, or when climate change forces us to protect every single patch of soil and the plants that grow in it. I know that the original goal was to protect natural resources and create a more clear, consistent, and holistic approach, but this didn't get us there. It's muddied with waivers and exceptions, contradictory and confusing text, and no enforcement measures or penalties. That's why we oppose this zoning proposal and request a no action condition on the SECRA. The devil is in those details. And if you withdraw it and submit it, we'll help you write text that applies specifically to the Bronx and saves our SNAD for today and the future. Joni Mitchell once sang, "You don't know what you've got till it's gone." Well, we know, and you know. So let's do what we can to protect every little bit of paradise that's left, even if it's on institutional community facility property. Thank you so much for your time and attention today.
Thank you, Ms. Galone. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Karen Argenti, who will be followed by Laura Spalter.
Hi, my name is Karen Argenti. I represent the Bronx Council for Environmental Quality. We are specifically commenting on the DEIS, and how I find it to be fatally flawed, and you should go back and prepare it because it has many problems with it. I will read you a list of what I have found to begin with, and we will submit further details. I don't know what the date is for the submission, if you could tell me that at the end. So the DEIS fails to identify the current level of imperviousness, such as buildings and landscape area on the lots. This is important to ascertain the impact on the ecosystem. 2, the new zoning resolution does not insert deletions and additions as is customary. This makes it difficult to compare changes and look at the impact. 3, you have not established the baseline of existing conditions. There's nothing explaining these existing conditions, so you can't tell if there was an impact from the existing conditions to what the change will be. After almost 35 years, the stated purpose of the SNAD to protect, maintain, and enhance the natural features has been changed to incorporate development. Do you have any data to support doing this? And since it's not provided in the EIS, it's hard to tell if there's an impact. You neglected to identify the number of lots and the acres by categories of 10,000 square feet, 1 acre, less than 1 acre, greater than 1 acre, and which ones are in community facilities. It's hard to tell exactly what you're looking to do. 6, you failed to provide letters from interested agencies as is customary, like the DEP, the DPR, landmarks, and some New York State agencies. 7, you've omitted the Hudson River, Alderbrook, and the Harlem River as natural assets. 8, you reversed the 197A 2005 zoning change for all SNADs from 46,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet without examining the impact. 9, you've neglected to even mention the long-term control plan for CSOs and MS4s, nor recognize the impacts, the indicators for these impacts, which is the flooding conditions, which were mentioned in the 197A, causing extra salt during winter storms, which goes into the parks and the rivers. This EIS is like throwing away the baby with the bathwater. Like Staten Island, I demand you choose the no action option for the Bronx SNAD. You could ask me any questions you like on the environment.
Welcome your submitting the written.
We will be talking about the level of imperviousness and the critical nature of that. And when is the
I'll make an announcement at the end of the public hearing.
okay, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is Laura Spalter, who will be followed by Christopher Rizzo.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Laura Spalter, and I'm Vice Chair of Bronx Community Board 8, and I am speaking on its behalf today. I spoke at the public hearing held on August 14th. I urged then—
Excuse me, if I could ask the secretary, I believe that a person is only able to speak once at a public hearing. This is for additional testimony. If you have written comments, we'd very much welcome them.
I only have 1 minute left, and I'm
afraid that
the comments.
this is
You
for
have
people who have
actually
not.
already spoken on this hearing, and so we can collect your written testimony, but you are not allowed to testify twice at the same hearing.
Understood.
But so we will welcome your written testimony.
Understood.
Thank you.
I came here to bring it all and to urge you to listen to all the Bronxites who have spoken. Thank you.
Which we will. Thank you, Ms. Spalter.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Christopher Rizzo.
Good morning. My name is Christopher Rizzo, and I'm an environmental and land use attorney, and I served as a member of the department's SNAD working group that started in 2015 to address these potential amendments to the SNAD. I want to read from a letter I submitted to the commission, to the chair, in support of these amendments, and at the end I will address 2 recent developments that came after my letter. I am writing in support of the Department of City Planning's proposed modifications to the SNAD zoning regulations. I had served since 2015 on the department's SNAD working group that advised on issues in the Riverdale SNAD, and my comments do not relate to the application's applicability on Staten Island. The amendments have 4 elements that help win my support. 1, greater focus on open space preservation. Preserving the remaining tracts of open space in the SNAD is the most important issue in the SNAD. Number 2, control of zoning lot subdivisions. Number 3, pressure on large institutional landowners to engage in long-term planning and preserve more significant amounts of open space on their property, including through clustering of development. And number 4, clearer as-of-right options for owners of smaller lots that simply want to follow the rules without a costly and time-consuming public review process. I retain 2 concerns about these amendments. Number 1, control of tax lot subdivisions, which are distinct from zoning lot subdivisions and are equally problematic in the SNAD. Please address that issue. Number 2, I have concerns about enforcement by the Department of Buildings, particularly with regard to the expertise of plan examiners and lack of qualified inspectors. With this letter, I asked the department to address both issues in its responses to comments. I want to thank the department for taking the SNAD amendment process so seriously and the thoughtful work product. Since this letter, there have been 2 developments. 1 is the removal of the Staten Island portion of the amendments from the proposal. That does not concern me at all. I didn't read them. Number 2, a potential solution to the enforcement problem. My understanding is that the department is talking about the possibility of notifying the community board as well as possibly adjacent homeowners about an application that would not be subject to a public review process, to inform them about the start of the 45-day Department of Building Zoning appeal process. The Department of Building Zoning appeal process is a very meaningful process. I have used it for clients opposing projects from time to time. It allows neighbors or community boards or elected officials to submit a formal objection to zoning compliance to the Department of Buildings, which is reviewed and responded to by the Department of Buildings. If they don't like that answer, they can appeal to the Commissioner of the Department of Buildings. If they don't like that answer, they can appeal to the Board of Standards and Appeals. Ensuring that the Community Board has notice of all applications, including those that are going to be excluded from public review, would be a meaningful solution to the enforcement problem at DOB. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Rizzo? Commissioner Levin.
Mr. Rizzo, I have a question not related to your testimony, really, but to your experience as a land use attorney. Have you been involved in filing applications on behalf of the small property owners, the owners of the small properties that would be excluded?
No. My experience in the SNAD, it includes maybe 3 projects in opposition to SNAD applications, where I represented property owners around an application that were using the SNAD rules to oppose it.
Okay.
Nevertheless, I'm here in support of these amendments.
Understood. Thank you for coming.
Other questions? Commissioner Marin. Not so fast, Mr. Rizzo.
Mr. Rizzo, so we've heard from residents, and we've heard from several folks about the enforcement by DOB, as well as I too remain concerned about that. What suggestions would you make at this time for the process to maybe suggest something other than the DOB, or maybe strengthening the DOB's review of these applications?
Look, part of it is a funding issue. The Bronx DOB doesn't have a lot of inspectors. They may not have expertise. They need training, formal training on the SNAD rules and what those mean. But I do think that the proposal to provide formal notification to the community board as well as neighbors of an application to allow them to utilize the DOB's existing zoning challenge process, a 45-day period, would be very meaningful.
Other questions? Commissioner Cirillo.
Thank you. I just have a question regarding the suggestion or sort of the plea about the tax lot subdivision being addressed by us. What is it that you would like to see us do in that area versus the responsibility of the Department of Finance with respect to tax lots? How do you see that playing into the zoning?
I haven't played out a solution, to be honest. The response that city planning staff would give me is that it's a Department of Finance issue. And as a legal matter, that's true. I just think that you should be aware that it poses a quiet threat to the SNAD, because you can subdivide a zoning lot as of right, so long as the resulting tax lots are zoning compliant.
Yeah.
And then it puts tremendous pressure on the city to approve applications for those individual tax lots, even if they remain one zoning lot. I'm very pleased that the SNAD amendments address the zoning lot subdivision issue.
Right.
That's very, very important. But I wish there were a way for Department of City Planning and Department of Finance to talk and come to some sort of agreement about how tax lot subdivisions and SNADs would be handled.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know if you had a specific recommendation, but I think the advice and suggestion is certainly a good one, given what
agencies can come to MOUs and agreements about how to handle things and talk in advance, and that would be one solution.
As the former finance commissioner, that's why I was interested in that question. Thank you.
You wear many hats, Commissioner Cirillo. Thank you for the testimony. Those are the only people who have signed up to speak. If there are others present who would like to, please come forward now. Okay, then I will note that the record on this matter is going to remain open for comments on the draft environmental impact statement through 5 p.m. on Monday, the 9th of September. And with that, the public hearing is closed.
Borough of Queens, calendar number 23, Community District 1, ULIP number C190424 PCQ, a public hearing in the matter of an application for the site selection and acquisition of property concerning the fire department's and emergency medical services station 49.
Our first speaker is David Harney.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission, and congratulations on the new space. It's absolutely stunning. Much better than Spectre Hall. Again, my name is David Harney. I'm the Chief of Staff to the Deputy Fire Commissioner for Support Services. The application before the Commission this morning is for site selection and acquisition of parcel of privately owned property at 42nd Street in the Steinway section of Community Board 1 for the relocation of EMS Station 49. Station 49 was one of the first new facilities opened after the 1996 Fire Department EMS merger. It was located in the basement of Mount Sinai Hospital's ambulatory building, but this had significant operational logistical issues. Meanwhile, in 2013, the hospital initiated a major expansion program which required the demolition of this building. While the hospital offered to provide the fire department with space in the basement of their new facility, the agency opted to relocate off the campus. The agency worked with OMB and DCAS, and we have identified the Department of Parks Department property under the Triborough Bridge as an optimal relocation site. In June 2014, the agency developed a memorandum of understanding with Parks for this use, but because the site is designated parkland, our use could only be temporary. So in December 2014, utilizing about 3,600 square feet of construction-style trailers, the fire department relocated the EMS Station 49 and began operations. However, the agency continued to have difficulty in identifying a viable replacement site during this period, and funding remained an issue. Also, while this site was a step up from Mount Sinai, there were labor management and safety and health issues, including continuous rumbling of the building brought on by the traffic on the Triborough, but also roosting birds and bird droppings were clogging air intakes and creating health concerns, which actually required the agency to spend approximately $20,000 a month to clean up the site. Meanwhile, in 2017, as our MOU was almost expiring, Parks asked us for an update, and we worked out a new agreement with Parks to extend our use of the site till 2020. At this time, OMB came back in and provided the agency with $5 million in capital funding for site acquisition, and again, we worked with DCAS to identify private space. In mid-2018, DCAS identified a site at 1940 42nd Street in Steinway section of Community Board 1. We inspected the site, we found it optimal for EMS operations. The proposed location measures approximately 22,000 square feet, it's 2 stories high with a mezzanine, and is located in an M11 zone. Specifically, the building can be vacated immediately, is in pristine condition because it's currently occupied, has 1 drive-in doorway and 1 interior loading dock, is street-to-street with dimensions approximately 100 by 220, has indoor parking for 12 ambulances, and can be ready for EMS operations within the year. We plan to reuse the first floor for the ambulance storage and for associated storage functions, really medical and vehicle supplies. The second floor we plan to use for locker and bathroom facilities, pantry, fitness area, and for various administrative functions. The fire department firmly believes this site will address the emergency medical response needs of this area of Queens, both today and moving forward. The site located in an N11 area, and therefore there will be limited impact on area residents. And it provides the agency with the critical space it requires to meet the essential mission of timely emergency medical response to this community.
Thank you.
As such, we respect your support.
Beautifully timed. That was a lot of information in 3 minutes. Questions from Mr. Harney? Commissioner Burney.
Good to see you, Mr. Harney. How are you?
Good to see you, Commissioner.
It strikes me the EMS division has always been the sort of poor cousin of the department in terms of facilities. And do you have other locations that are similarly ill-served that you have plans to relocate, or is this the last of them?
Well, right now, because we are situated on parkland space, the agency has to relocate. As you know, parkland is deemed parkland from the center of the earth to the end of the sky in perpetuity. Also, with the additional issues we have on the site and this health and safety problems, it's in the best interest of the department to relocate. Community Board 1, which as you most probably know is an extremely dense area in terms of available property. When I spoke with both Community Board and with the Borough President's Office, we made note that there were 3 vacant DOT parking lots within the confines of the Community Board, but they're all located within the confines of the Central Business District, and really that's a non-starter.
No, that wasn't really my question. I'm not concerned about this. I'm thinking citywide. Are there other locations?
Citywide, OMB has provided the department with money for 5 new EMS stations in the Bronx, which we are now working with DCAS to identify appropriate sites for. We are working toward the relocation of EMS Station 7 in the Midtown West area of Manhattan. And we have other options that we're looking at citywide because call volume continues to increase, and we continue to add ambulance tours to the system almost on an annual basis.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Harney. Our next speaker is Bruce Jacobs.
Good morning, everybody again. Coalition of the Rockaways, supporter of New York State medical and religious freedom, U.S. Navy veteran, 9/11 first responder, 30 years New York City Transit, fighter for Queens, fighter for Far Rockaway, fighter for all of New York. I totally am in agreement with EMS because anything for the fire department that could improve conditions and health things, I'm totally for. My thing is the idea that they say that there's no other place in the neighborhood. I believe this man. My experience with this man is that he's an honest man and that he's always told the truth in my dealings with him. So I would say that it's a good, if they're saying they need to move, I agree 100%. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, those are the only folks who have signed up to speak on this item. If anyone else is interested in speaking, please come forward. The public hearing is closed.
Borough of Queens, calendar number 24, Community District 1, ULIP number C 190443ZSQ. A public hearing in the matter of an application for the grant of a special permit concerning Plaza 48.
Our first speaker is Vincent Petraro.
Madam Chair, I'm recused on this matter.
So noted. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. My name is Vincent Petraro. I represent the owners of Plaza 48 Shopping Center. And we are here, as stated, for a special permit pursuant to Section 74922 to permit a commercial establishment of greater than 10,000 feet in this M11 zoning district. The property is located on 48th Street. Let me just jump ahead. Between Northern Boulevard to the north and 37th Avenue to the south. It's outlined in red in this particular diagram. Just a little quick history. Back in 1999, this shopping center had two main uses, a Pergament and a Toys R Us / Kids R Us. Both of them were allowed as of right in this M1 zone. They were in what we call Building 1, which is the larger building to the right on the plan, and Building 2 to the left. Building 2 was Toys R Us, Building 1 was to the right. We came here back to city planning back in 1999 and again in 2003 to get approval for National Wholesale Liquidators, Building 1, which is considered a variety store. And that was what the special permit covered. City Planning Commission approved it. The council finally approved it in 2003. National Wholesale's left last fall. Toys R Us, as you know, is out of business and left last June. So this application now would be to allow retail stores in the same shopping center. Building 1 really already has the special permit. This would extend the special permit over both Building 1 and Building 2. The community board was very happy when they heard that the proposed uses are going to be a BJ's in Building 1 and a Burlington department store in Building 2. The parking lot is going to be increased in capacity due to the purchase of a lot on the south side of the property, and there's also going to be updated parking due to the more recent parking lot, so there'll be trees and plantings and et cetera. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for Mr. Petraro? Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bruce Jacobs.
Once again, for whoever wasn't in here, Bruce Jacobs, Coalition of the Rockaways, supporter of New York State medical and religious freedom, 9/11 first responder, U.S. Navy veteran, 30 years New York City Transit. I don't like the idea that they're changing zoning for unlimited size of buildings. There's a lot of shops on that area. What's going to happen to the small-time guy? There's nobody in here at this time to defend the store owners of that block. There's plenty of business in that neighborhood, like the man said himself. No limitation on floor area per establishment, with one proposed to be enlarged. How big is this building going to be? Is it going to block the homeowners on a back street? Is it going to knock out all the local businesses? Are they going to use union apprenticeship programs to build these programs? What are the benefits of the neighborhood? I know I'm not the best speaker because I'm not a lawyer and all that. I'm just a person fighting for my neighborhood. So, I see sometimes I don't get questions, but I do have a lot of support. And the thing is that I feel like, what about the small store owner? Yeah, he's saying BJ's. BJ's is going to knock out 20, 30 stores on that block. Unlimited. They have a zoning. They want to change the zoning. That has to be looked into very strongly. I don't see anybody here really from any of these small store owners. And they say the neighborhood, yeah, the community board. I've been in plenty of community board meetings. Community board sometimes, there's a few people are in there, they tell you it's different. But I like to see the representatives of these store owners to see what's going on, who's going to be blocked. Does the neighborhood really want, these big giant stores, and are they going to be affected? Now, he says enlarged. How big are these buildings going to be? It says unlimited. That means they could build a building 20 stories high. Unlimited. The change of zoning, like I said, once again, is a very, very, very big thing. Anybody could come in here with a big lawyer and come in here and say, hey, I want this changed. To a small store owner who don't have no money, a regular worker, he can't. And I want to make sure that that small store owner is protected from being pushed out, because there's plenty of stores and businesses in that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you. If there's anyone else present who would want to be heard on this matter, please come forward. The public hearing is closed.
Borough of Queens, calendar numbers 25 and 26. Community District 1, calendar number 25, ULIP number C190124, ZMQ. Calendar number 26, ULIP number N190125, ZRQ. A public hearing in the matter of application for zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 44-01 Northern Boulevard rezoning.
I would note that while signed up as an applicant team, there's only one speaker, so there will be a 3-minute presentation and by Mr. Bass, and then he has available 4 questions, Nijema Rivera and also Matt McLean.
Then I'll speak quickly. I'm Richard Bass. I'm with Ackerman. The applicant is 4401 Northern Boulevard LLC, better known as Major Auto World. The architect is Rawlings Architect. Hannock is our MIH administrator. I'm with Ackerman, not officially on the team, but we signed an agreement with 32BJ about 9-10 months ago. The project you can see on the zoning map is literally across the street from the previous application. The north side of Northern Boulevard is primarily residential. The south side, where Plaza 48 is located, is commercial. Here are pictures of the site. It's 3 tax lots. It's a auto sales and repair place. It has 17 curb cuts. It will be replaced by 2 curb cuts. The proposed building will be 10 stories on Northern Boulevard. It will have approximately 335 residential units. 100 of those units will be affordable. The ground floor will be auto sales. The client, the applicant, would like to come back in and have a auto dealership there for only sales. Our proposed actions are straightforward. It's a zoning map amendment, changing the M11 to an R7X and R6B with a commercial overlay of C24 for the first 150 feet on Northern Boulevard. There's a zoning text amendment to allow MIH. We chose option 2 at the advice of the council member. We spoke with the council member about a year ago. The community board voted in favor of this application, 23-8, with the only recommendation that we consider option 1. We can accommodate option 1. We only chose option 2 on the advice of the council member. Here's the zoning change map, tax map showing the proposed zoning. Just to go back 1 second, on 34th Avenue, where there's an existing R6B C24 commercial overlay, there's 2 6-story buildings built in 1932. They're built to 4.6 FAR. They're about 70 feet tall, about 100 units. Here is, again, MIH option 2, but we're open to option 1. The proposed building will have its massing on Northern Boulevard. We step down to townhouse-style design on the side streets. As the building gets taller at the setbacks, we go to a lighter building element, more glazing. Here's the site plan. The floor plan showing the auto dealership and the elevations. Again, we're providing the...
Thank you. Commissioner Knuckles.
Thank you. Richard, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Assuming this went forward, where would the dealership currently on the site go?
The dealership would be absorbed into other dealerships that the client has, the applicant has. So he's negotiating with different brands right now to go into this site. The auto repair will be done at his other sites. He owns approximately 6, 7 sites along Northern Boulevard. So relocation is not an issue.
Other questions? Commissioner Levin.
Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Anna.
You addressed one of the concerns that the community board had, but they also had some thoughts about the zoning designation that you're seeking. You're applying for an R7X, and you're certainly aware that we had before us an application, a couple of, not in the same stretch of Northern Boulevard recently, that came in as an R7X and then was reduced to an R7D. The community board's observation is that the proposed development here looks more like an R7D type building, and why shouldn't you be seeking an R7D rather than R7X?
Well, we had an extensive discussion about this at the community board, both at the land use committee and at the full board. The community board approved the R7X 23-8, and the person who wrote the report voted for the R7X, even though it reads like she wasn't supporting an R7X. I have some issues with how the report is written. We did an analysis of what an R7D would look like. An R7D would reduce it by about 21,000 square feet, losing about 23, 24 apartments, 7 or 8 of them affordable. And the difference in the massing of our building would be a 10-story building to a 9-story building. And from the street, one cannot tell the difference. And we had an extensive discussion, and the community board agreed an R7X at this location, at this site, which is over 63,000 square feet, was appropriate.
Since you did that analysis, would you be able to share that with the commission as well?
Oh, absolutely.
I think that would be helpful.
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Bruce Jacobs.
Once again, Bruce Jacobs, Coalition of the Rockaways, New York State, Medical and Religious Freedom, U.S. Navy veteran, 9/11 first responder, 30 years New York City Transit, business owner, and fighter for Queens. First of all, I don't like the idea that this building is such a big building, and I understand they say that the community board, that they agreed 23-8, there's 8 people that didn't like it. That means that in the neighborhood, there's a lot more than 8 people. Second of all, like the man said, what about, the commissioner said, what about this? He says there's no problem relocating this car dealership. Where is this car dealership right now? Are they in this room? I don't see them in here. I hear from one side. I don't see, the other side. Another thing, he said that he made a deal with 32 BJ. Okay, that's fine and dandy. What about the rest of the workers? What about the other unions? Union iron workers, union apprenticeship programs, and all kind of other. Now, another thing, why didn't he want to accept the M1? He was pushing that, the councilman agreed with it. Why didn't he want to push for the M1? He stuck with the M2. If they were talking about, there must have been some kind of problem. He says he didn't like the way the report was written. I wish I could see that report because, you know, there's something wrong. Now, the other thing is that the size of this building is going to block out people. And they say designated areas, mandatory inclusionary housing areas. You know, that's the excuse for them to build big buildings and all kind of stuff. I really like to make sure that they're going to use, first of all, union workers, all union apprenticeship programs. I'm not even asking for the top. That why is it so big? I would like to see this dealership, like, where are they? Are they really going to get relocated, or are they being pushed out? The questions have to be answered because, you know, when you're going to put a giant building on Northern Boulevard, he says high density. I know Northern Boulevard very good. There's not giant buildings there. There's a lot of private homes and small businesses. There's some big buildings, but not total big businesses. And, you know, I want to make sure that this ain't just a big real estate with a fancy lawyer that's building a big building and promising the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Questions? Our next speaker is Richard Iorio.
Good morning, Chair Lago and members of the commission. My name is Richard Iorio. I work as a 32BJ porter, and I've been working for 32BJ for the last 9 years. I'm here today on behalf of my union to express our support for the proposed development at 4401 Northern Boulevard. 32BJ represents over 4,400 members who live and work in Community District 1. At 32BJ, we support developments that will bring much-needed permanently affordable housing and property service jobs that will pay the prevailing wage. We're pleased to report that Bruce Mendel, the developer for the project, has made a credible commitment to pay prevailing wage to the future building service workers at this site. The prevailing wage is a livable wage that includes significant benefits like paid days off, sick time, and retirement and health benefits. Jobs like mine that are life-changing and give workers, families access to upward mobility and security. We see this as an example of responsible development and urge you to approve the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Iorio? Thank you. Those are the only speakers who've signed up, and as always, if anyone else is interested, they could come forward now. The public hearing is closed.
Calendar number 27, Borough of Brooklyn, Community District 3, ULIP number C190379, ZSK, a public hearing in the matter of an application for the grant of a special permit concerning 1247 Atlantic Avenue Pool.
Our first speaker will be Yuta Forth, who will be followed by Alexander Blakely.
Hi, my name is Yossi, and Yuta is actually not going to speak. I'm going to speak instead of him.
I'm sorry. We are only able to have folks who have signed up to speak, so if Mr. Firth would like to speak, he's welcome.
Hi, my name is Yuta Firth. I'm a developer working with the development team for 1247 M&F Management, affiliated with the project 1247 Atlantic Avenue. We went to build a building, a 10-story building, and in the middle of the construction, we put in an amendment to make a pool in the backyard. Since the level was a different level, so we made a pool over there. We went for approval for DOB. And the DOB gave us an approval for the pool. Then we went to Department of Health, and they give us approval for Department of Health as well. We went for sign-offs for the building because we went to CO, and they asked us for permission for the DCP because they show us then you're only allowed to build 5 feet away from 100 feet away from the property, and this was built 5 feet away, and they put us in a, so we went now for a special permit for the DCP, and we look it should be approved for the DCP. The initial was approved by the DOB. The only thing which we're coming over here is because we need the variance from the 5 feet, from the 100 feet to the 5 feet. And I have here my the architect, Alex. We should take over.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Firth? Commissioner Dweck.
Just going to go to one of the borough president's questions, which was the operating hours. He asked that you extend, should this be approved, that he asked that you extend the operating hours of the pool? Can you speak to that?
The extend which hours?
The hours, I believe you have it closing at 7 now, and
yes.
One of his recommendations was that it stay open longer in the summertime?
So your question, if it's going to be?
Would that be something you'd be amenable to doing should this go forward?
I'm not looking to go till the middle of the night. If extended, maybe 1 hour longer, but I'm not looking for that.
Okay, that's pretty much in line with what I believe he wanted from his recommendation. Thank you.
Commissioner Levin.
Well, I guess kind of related to that, but more generally, as you're certainly aware, this is the first time we've seen one of these special permits.
Yes.
To many of us, it came as a surprise to realize that there even was such a section in the
exactly for me.
It was probably a very bad surprise to you too.
For me, when I saw the objection, it was a big surprise because I was approved by the DOB and by the Department of Health. I was shocked, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, so you're probably more shocked than we were. But just backing up, before you even knew about all this rigmarole, can you tell us a little bit more about how it came to you that this would be a good location for a pool? Where the idea came from, who's going to, how it's going to fit in well with the building, what kind of how is it going to be used, what kind of people are going to be using it, how active it's going to be, and what it might involve for the people who live in the surrounding, who are going to hear the noise from the pool.
No, we're not going to. This is a good question, but I think Alex has a better answer for that.
Okay.
He is more prepared for that.
All right, but you're the guy deciding what
we fixed all that,
the vision for the building.
Right, but he can explain it to you better than me.
Okay.
My language is not the best one.
No, you're doing fine.
All right.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Firth. Our next speaker will be Alexander Blakely.
Hi, Alexander Blakely, architect for the applicant and owner of 1247 Atlantic. Sorry, I'm just going to advance to the next slide. So I'm just going to briefly describe the situation of the pool, which is on the northeast portion of the property. I'm sure that you're already aware of most of this information, but to address immediately your concern or question regarding who's going to use the pool and how it might impact visually or acoustically the neighbors adjacent. First of all, the pool is surrounded by a solid wood fence on 3 sides and then a transparent 6-foot fence facing the building itself. We believe that from the properties surrounding, which are predominantly, by the way, as you know, commercial and manufacturing in these districts, that it will have very little impact because they're at a good distance from the pool, and they're separated also by a drop in section facing the northeast portion here to the R6B district, which is to the northeast. As you know, the hours of operation are going to be from 11 to 7 during the summer months, maybe to 8 p.m., and it will be supervised and controlled. It's interesting, as you said, that there's not been any precedence for having a pool in rear yards of these properties, and I think it's curious that just from my opinion, that we're allowed, for example, to have, or actually required to have recreation areas in quality housing buildings which can be located in the rear yard, which for all practical purposes, could create just as much visual or acoustic impact to the neighbors, but that a pool is, requires special permit if you're within 100 feet of the property line, which is the case for most properties of this format. So I don't know, did I answer any of the questions that you had regarding the impact that it has acoustically?
Are you done with your testimony? You have 25 seconds.
Okay, I wanted to briefly mention that the borough president strongly is in approval of the project.
Great. Questions? Vice Chair Knuckles.
Mr. Blakely. Yes. Could you tell us the dimension between the edge of the pool, which looks to be 8 feet wide, and the perimeter barriers on either side?
Well, it's less than 2 feet from the north, and it's about 7 feet from the east and west property lines.
Yeah. These two dimensions in particular, what are those?
The 8-foot and 11-foot dimension?
No.
Sorry.
The space between.
Yeah, that's about 1'7" and 12 feet from the pool on the south.
You don't think that's particularly tight to
the property line or between the two facilities?
property line, yeah.
I mean, I think it's a comfortable distance practically to use the facility. I mean, once you're within a certain proximity, which is, under the required 50 feet, then I think it doesn't make much of a difference in terms of its acoustical impact.
No, I'm thinking less acoustical than just mobility along the pool, along the sides of the pool.
I don't have any images here showing how one gets into. It's not actually. It's a spa. It's a whirlpool. So you sit in it. You enter it from the south, and you're not meant to get out of it from the north.
Okay, thank you.
If you do have a drawing showing that, a rendering, that could be helpful. Commissioner Levin.
How deep is this pool? It's pretty long and skinny. It's essentially a lap pool. Is that the idea?
Yes, it's under 7 feet is the depth of it.
Oh, so 7 feet can still be, that puts me underwater.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I misrepresented there. It's only 5 feet deep.
Oh, okay, yeah, got my eyeballs sticking out, but not my nose. And how much of the year will this be able to be open?
It's open during the summer months from June to early September, so about now.
Okay, all right, so not heated, so it's year-round?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And by the way,
Commissioner Dweck.
yeah.
Yeah, just looking at the picture, is there any kind of fencing around the pool? How do you plan to, for safety concerns, is there going to be a lifeguard, or is it going to be fenced so that kids can't just walk in, or pets, or?
There's going to be rules that will be posted, regulations for use of the pool. There is a fence to the south that you can see, this one that you can see through, which will have a fob card reader, which will only allow residents with those cards to use the pool. And there will always be a supervisor at the site supervising any pool activity. So I think it will be safe in those terms.
I might recommend having some kind of maybe, I don't know about privacy issues, but my concern is children, on the loose walking in. So if you had some kind of camera or something where it could be monitored somehow.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of cameras in place.
Commissioners,
Thank you.
Commissioner Cirillo.
Just a question about on the off-season. What do you envision the cover to the pool to be when the pool is not open? Will it be something that will just be a cover to the pool and it's still not an accessible area? Or will it be something that sort of creates an opportunity to use that space during the off-season?
That's a good question. I mean, presently, we're just going to have a roll cover that covers it, but I think there's a lot of examples for pools where you can have an actual deck that would slide from one side to the other. In this particular case, there might not be room to do that, but I think that might be something that we could discuss.
But it's not something you've considered at the moment. There's no plan for anything other than a more traditional pool cover.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Blakely? Commissioner Rumpershot.
How you doing? I was just noticing on the Schedule A in the DOB system, it has swimming pool but no number of occupants. Has the number of occupants been calculated for that area?
For the swimming pool itself, I would have to refer back to the drawings and see whether that's been calculated. I'm sorry.
If you could follow up with that, it would be helpful.
Sure.
Questions? Commissioner
Quick
Cirillo.
follow-up. I don't know why I just thought of this, but is this a pool during the season that will be lifeguard covered, or will this be a pool that says there's no lifeguard and sort of at your own risk? I mean, given the population of those who would be using it, is that been determined?
We don't have a lifeguard on duty. It's sorry. Oh, when it's open, there will be a lifeguard.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Blakely.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Yarsi Ehrenfeld.
Hi, my name is Yossi Ehrenfeld. I'm working with the developer for the past 2 years since we constructed the building. And basically going to rephrase what you just said before, that we finished the building, and midst of 2018, we did an amendment to include the pool. And at that time, when everything was approved by the DOB, DOH, the issue came up afterwards when we went for a certificate of occupancy, COO, to get an approval to get a final CO. Then the project went into audit, and that's when the issue arose that we have to get a special permit for this pool since the boundary line is too close to the pool. And we've been working back and forth with the City Planning Commission, and we had the Community Board 3 looking into it, and we had a public hearing, and overwhelming support by all of the Community Board and by the Commissioner. The Board of Commissioner, we had a hearing, and as well as you all know, you got back the overwhelming support from the Board of Commissioner as well, with even some adjustments to even extend the pool hours, which is even more in favor for this project. And as far as screening, we went through with the architect and everybody to allow the most acoustical wooden fences that will actually avoid any disturbance for any neighbors. And as said before, most of the neighboring buildings are commercial, unoccupied, and factory manufacturing, which is not even an issue. The entire place, the only residentials to the back, which we have invested a lot of times finding a solution, getting an acoustical fence, which will eliminate any of noise disturbance for the neighbors in the back. And I'm not sure it was mentioned before, the elevation of the back is actually lower. The back building to the back of the pool is lower than our property, which we are building an 8-foot fence, and in practical, it's actually, there's a 4-foot elevation drop to the next building, which is actually making it a 12 feet fence from the neighboring back of the building, which is even getting it a greater acoustical or any noise disturbance issue. So, and I think we have been working with everybody, working with the DOB, DOH. We got a DOH approval certificate for use of this pool, and the DOB had no issue with including this in our plans. The only issue came up with a special pool permit since it's too close to the lot line.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Ehrenfeld? Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is Bruce Jacobs.
You left your phone. Somebody's. Okay. Hello, everybody. Coalition of Rockaways, supporter of New York State medical and religious freedom, U.S. Navy veteran, Blue Water, 9/11 first responder, and 30 years New York City Transit. Yeah, it sounds pool very close to the other buildings. If there was, why they sent it to you, there must be some kind of problem. It's very close. They're saying it's going to be open. It's going to be open just for the summer. Is it going to affect the neighbors? They say there's no neighbors, that they're working with the people in the back. They say it's all construction. What about the safety issues of this pool? It was sent to you for a reason. The reason, because nobody wanted to take the responsibility of the safety of children and of people drowning. If it's a legit and everything, it sounds okay, but the idea that it's so close to the building of the next door, that is something to look at. You need the dimensions of this, because if somebody ends up getting killed or walking in there, some child, because of the safety issues, it is a serious matter. So, and is this pool for the building, or is this pool for a business? It's just for the building, or is it for a business? That's another thing that I would like to see clarified, because it's very important. Because when you're asking for a permission to change it, if it's for the building, and then like the other commissioner said, he says there's going to be lifeguard, that has to be in writing and make sure, because they could end up changing that and put in at your own risk. At your own risk, somebody could end up dying. I don't want to see anybody dying for it. And is this for the building? Is this for a business? The idea that, it's so close to the other building, something, the dimensions have to be checked into. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? Anyone else who would be interested in being heard on this item could come forward now. Seeing none, the public hearing is closed.
Borough of Brooklyn, calendar numbers 28 and 29, Community District 2. Calendar number 28, ULIP number C, 180524ZMK. Calendar number 29, ULIP number N, 180525ZRK. A public hearing in the matter of applications for zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 101 Fleet Place rezoning.
Our first speaker will be Raymond Levin, to be followed by Jordan Weiss.
Thank you. I can never work this. Here we go. Good morning. I'm Raymond Levin. I'm Special Senior Counsel at the law firm of Herrick Feinstein. We represent the Lesser Group, who's doing business as Fleet Center, Inc., the applicant for the subject zoning map and text amendments to allow the development of a 14-story office building on Fleet Place in Brooklyn. Rather than recap what Anthony so ably presented on Monday, I will focus on the Lesser Group's outreach and development history. We have had multiple meetings with local stakeholders, including University Towers Board of Directors, our neighbor, Community Board 2's Land Use Committee, Ingersoll Houses Tenants Association to our north, Downtown Brooklyn Partnership, Service Workers Union, among others. The first formal public hearing was held at Community Board 2. Unlike several other recent applications in downtown Brooklyn, there was no opposition, and Community Board 2 recommended approval. Similarly, the Borough President's hearing, no speakers were heard in opposition. Yet, the Brooklyn Borough President recommended disapproval, although in his recommendation, he acknowledged general support for the broadening of opportunities for office development and acknowledging his general support for the redevelopment of unused land for uses that maximize opportunities for jobs, and also saying that he is generally supportive of the redevelopment of 101 Fleet Place. The Borough President indicated he would support the subject application if the Lesser Group would commit to providing at least 15% of the floor area in the building for community facility uses, and that the remainder be for commercial uses only. The Lesser Group readily agrees to this condition. While the applicant is willing to enter into a binding agreement, it has not been the practice of this commission, nor the City Council, to be party to a restrictive declaration where a zoning map amendment is the only action. However, even without a binding agreement, the Lesser Group history and practice are in line with the suggested program. The lesser group owns over 20 buildings in Brooklyn alone. All are commercial or predominantly commercial, and a significant number are occupied by tenants, that would be characterized as community facilities. The list you can see, these are just selected tenants. They own a lot of buildings. They hold these buildings. They're not flippers. They don't sell them. They have stable tenancies. And as you can see from the list, they're the kind of uses that certainly in our meetings with Community Board and the local Ingersoll houses are the kind of things they'd like to see. Given the support of our neighbors and the downtown community and the client's track record that matches...
Thank you, Mr. Levin. We'd be glad to take your written testimony and questions. Commissioner Dweck.
Thank you, Mr. Levin. So I guess the overlapping comments from the borough president, and I have a letter in front of me from Councilmember Cumbo, do address what you've addressed, which is the requirement that the building be a commercial property. And again, going back to the borough president's comments, you've committed to 15% of the building being for a community facility. So, and I understand the problem in a restrictive declaration, but what assurances do we have that the project will go forward as stated, a commercial building, and with the community facility in place?
Well, all I can say is that you can look at this applicant. He's been involved in development for decades. He purchases buildings, many of them smaller buildings in the borough of Brooklyn and also in other boroughs. In fact, currently he's building out a facility for pre-K education for the Department of Education in Staten Island. And you will also look, if you look at his real estate records, he doesn't sell his property, he holds them, he gets tenancies that are stable. If you look through his portfolio, you will not find residential buildings. You will not find big residential buildings. There are some residential above taxpayers. That's what this client does. That's his, so I don't know how else to assure you, except this is what this client's history is.
Is your client here today?
Yes, he is.
Will he be testifying?
If you want him to, I'm sure he will.
Love to hear him say that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Birdie.
I don't think the Commissioner was questioning the motives of lesser, but let's say, for example, the market changes, he decides he's not going to develop it, he flips it, becomes a large residential building. What's to prevent that from happening?
There is nothing to prevent that from happening. The zoning resolution is, while thousands of pages, doesn't have a district that allows only commercial and community facilities. We could do an M16, which doesn't allow residential, but also doesn't allow community facilities, and you would get a commercial building. So if in the speculation that something could happen, yeah, something could happen. But over decades, that hasn't happened. Over business cycles, that has not happened with this client. He has his modus operandi is this, is maintaining small commercial buildings, although he does own some larger ones, but they're all commercial buildings.
So what's your objection to the restrictive declaration?
I have none. We have no objection. It is both the commission and the city council and the borough president that in order to have an enforceable restrictive declaration, someone has to be the monitor. So we could enter into a restrictive declaration that says we will only build commercial building with community facilities. That gets filed with our building application at the building department. If everything goes well, everything goes well. If somehow we violate that restrictive declaration, somebody has to be there to say, hey, you violated it, and in order to do what you want to do, you got to come back to us.
If I could follow up, Commissioner Berney, and we'll follow up at post-hearing review, but it has long been the practice of the commission and the department not to engage in restrictive declarations. We're considering a zoning change that allows a range of uses, and when the commission votes on that, should it approve it, it approves it across the range of uses. Many years ago, the commission had engaged in restrictive declarations. We no longer believe that that is an appropriate mechanism. We believe that flexibility inherent in our zoning districts is appropriate. Some applicants have, in discussions with the City Council, engaged in restrictive declarations with matters both land use and non-land use relating to their developments.
Okay. And one other question. So it's quite a large building on a very narrow street. And I understand, presumably, the increase in density is a commercial issue. Is there any way in which a smaller building would work on that building that would be less impact on a very narrow street?
Well, we can talk about the narrow street. You know, it's a one-way street. It's mapped at 60 feet in width. And this building, as opposed to what could be on the other side of the street, on the same narrow street, you can see that it's one block from Myrtle to Willoughby. On our side of the street, there are 15-story buildings. Ours would be 14, although it would be a little bit taller because commercial floors are a little bit higher than residential floors. And across the street, the new building on the corner is 30 stories. The property that that's owned by the Gutman family could conceivably have a building in excess of 30 stories as well. We've done an environmental review, which says that the street can accommodate the traffic. At one point, in 2004, part of that rezoning of downtown Brooklyn, on that pale site with the plus 30 on it, was supposed to be a 475-car parking garage with the entrance and exit on Fleet Place. That is not going to happen. And in 2004, the environmental review said that the street was capable of handling the traffic as two ways. Now it's only one way. It's not going to be changing. And the current environmental review says that it's adequate. So the fact that it's narrow doesn't mean it doesn't function well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Commissioner Levin.
Not so much a question, but an observation, which is that we're really hard up against the fact that our zoning resolution is geared toward separation of uses. And the world has now changed, and you see combinations of uses happening in ways that the original sort of framework of the zoning resolution never contemplated. And we have the reality that the rezoning of downtown Brooklyn, which was intended to trigger commercial development starting many years ago, resulted instead in the markets producing a whole lot of residential development that hadn't really been what the purpose of the rezoning was for. And we've seen the same thing happen in Long Island City. So we're grappling with the reality that we have a zoning designation that is being sought here, which the applicant has been very candid about explaining that they really do mean to build a commercial building, and I don't doubt that for a minute, but we all know that stuff happens in the real estate business. And so we also, as a commission, have to contemplate the possibility that there might be the residential alternative, as shown in the environmental work, of a 34-story, 400-foot tall residential building here, which, I mean, it's, you know, you're asking for something that is you're perfectly entitled to ask for, but gives us real pause given the way these commercial designations have been used, particularly in downtown Brooklyn, in areas that have seen a tremendous amount of development recently. And so I think that's the thing we're wrestling with, not doubting the integrity of your client or the depth of their commitment to building what they say they're going to build, but we're responsible not just to one applicant, but to an entire zoning framework.
I would note from the department's perspective, we find it hard to say that it is a bad result that we are producing tens of thousands of residential units in such a transit-rich neighborhood. The other thing that I would note is the zoning is fewer than 20 years old, and we all know that zoning changes of this type play out over decades, and as a department, we've been heartened to see that, well, first, we note that the recession put a real crimp in the production of office space outside of central business districts, while the housing market was very strong. And as a department, we're quite heartened to see now that we are seeing applications, private applications, where the private sector is recognizing that there is now a workforce, again, atop so much transit, and the applications are for commercial use. Our zoning quite consciously doesn't say just commercial. We recognize the mixed-use nature of so many of our city neighborhoods. And so you're right. Commissioners are absolutely right to note that there is not under zoning a guarantee of what will occur, but again, we have seen a shift, I would say, over the past 2 to 3 years in the types of applications that we're seeing in downtown Brooklyn. Mr. Levin, feel free to respond to Commissioner Levin.
All I can say is that this is not the first time that this question has come up where a zoning change is being requested where you could have multiple uses. We're perfectly willing, I am, to work with the department and the commission to try and figure out how to address that. Whether there's a simple way or not, I don't know. I've thought a lot about it. Obviously, coming to this hearing and knowing the question was going to be asked. So to the extent that my experience can be helpful, I offer it.
Okay, well, I had one idea. I just saw the previous applicants leaving. Maybe you should be applying for a special permit to put a swimming pool in the backyard, and then we would have the basis for a restrictive declaration.
There is a little terrace on the 6th floor.
No, but thank you for your comments. I do have to say that I am concerned about the proposed scale of this building. Because I do see Fleet Street as being, although it's adjacent to downtown Brooklyn, it's also across the street and backing up to what is more residential area. I think you're asking for a lot of density here, but I can't articulate it in, quantitative terms. But that's just how I feel about this one.
Well, thank you, and I believe there are other speakers, unless there are any more questions for me.
Other questions for Mr. Levin? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Jordan Weiss, who will be followed by Ed Brown.
This guy is not speaking. This guy is speaking. Good morning, Chair Lago and members of the Assembly, our committee. My name is Jordan Weiss, and I'm a doorman at 120 East 81st Street, and I've been a member of 32BJ for 3 years. I'm here today on behalf of my union to express our support for this project at 101 Fleet Place. As you know, 32BJ is the largest property service union in the country. We represent over 80,000 members across New York City, including 3,600 members who live and work in Community District 2. Members like me clean and maintain office and school buildings like the one being discussed tonight. We are happy to report that the applicant for this project, the Lesser Group, has made a credible commitment to pay prevailing wage to the future building service workers at this site. A prevailing wage job like mine allows working families in the city to live with dignity. We estimate that this project will generate 9 building service jobs, and we believe that they will provide an important economic opportunity for members of the surrounding community. We urge you to approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ed Brown, followed by Mayhew.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be quick. Ed Brown, Team Brown Consulting. I've been before you previously, 570 Fulton Street, Hudson Company's Cadman Library Project, and BFC Partners Senior Development on Myrtle Avenue. And what we do is we assure that local residents get the opportunity to work on some of these projects. When developers are willing to actually provide opportunities, they reach out to us, and we make the connection with residents in the neighborhood that are qualified and ready to go to work. I am born and raised in Ingersoll Houses, don't live there anymore, but I work directly with the tenant president, who I have a statement from. He had to go to the hospital. He's not able to come, and I want to read that. But we were approached by the lesser group in reference to working with them to help them increase local employment on the project and MWBE businesses as well. So on behalf of Darrell Burgess, the president from Ingersoll, give me a second, my phone locked on me. He wanted to say, Dear Chair Lago, I'm the president of the Ingersoll Tenants Association. The Ingersoll Public Housing Complex contains 1,840 apartments, 1 block north of the 101 Fleet Place property. Representatives of the lesser group have been in contact with us and have made a presentation at a meeting of our association. At the meeting, questions were raised regarding the future of the daycare center at the site, the potential for jobs for local residents, and the type of tenants that would be targeted. We were told that the daycare center would be offered an opportunity to return to the proposed office building, that a locally known workforce consultant will be engaged to provide outreach to match local residents with construction jobs, and that an urgent care medical facility would be sought to address a need identified by the tenants. We are convinced that the lesser group is sincere in its commitments to us, and that the proposed office community facility building will be a benefit to the residents of Ingersoll Houses. For those reasons, we endorse the proposed rezoning and urge a favorable vote. Darrell Burgess, Ingersoll Tenants Association.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Brown? Commissioner Burney.
Thank you for your testimony. I know Darrell Burgess, so I hope he's okay. He was in the hospital, but please give him.
Well, I don't want to elaborate. He's dealing with some medical issues.
Yeah, he's getting on.
But God willing, he'll be okay.
So give him my
We
best
grew up
regards.
together.
Give him my best regards.
Okay, will do. Will do.
Other questions?
Well,
Vice Chair Knuckles.
so, Mr. Brown, you have any projections about the numbers of jobs that you think you'll be able to attain on this project should it go forward?
Well, as of yet, I haven't sat with the developer in reference to the percentage that they're looking to meet. But whatever the percentage is, we know that we can fill that quota. We have too many people down there unemployed that just need an opportunity so we could stop the economic bleeding. There's a lot of opportunities in that surrounding community, and not all developers step up to provide opportunities. So anytime that we get one that's willing to reach out and provide opportunities, we support them and follow up to make sure they do what they say they're going to do.
So you identified a labor force as well as potential subcontractors, or you just focus on labor?
Oh, no, potential subcontractors as well. Actually, currently, right now, I am we are the MWBE consultants on 80 Flatbush Avenue. And I'm quite sure you guys are familiar with that project. And so we're trying to change the game. It's a lot going on in downtown Brooklyn. I don't like to place blame. A lot of the public housing residents have been left out of the development, and we created our consulting firm to change the game.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is May Yu, who will be followed by Bruce Jacobs.
Hello, Commissioner Lago and Commissioners of the City Planning Commission. My name is May Yu, and I'm the Vice President of Real Estate at the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership. On behalf of the partnership, I would like to express our strong support for the proposed rezoning and commercial office project plan at 101 Fleet Place. The project features about 205,000 square feet of commercial space, with floor plates for small office tenants and retail or community facility use on the ground floor. This project will help meet the consistent demand for commercial space in downtown Brooklyn and support continued job growth at a location that is transit-rich and easily accessible from the nearby NYCHA developments. Over the past few years, downtown Brooklyn has seen record job and business growth, despite a very constrained office market with vacancies between 2% and 8% over the past 5 years. This is particularly strong demand for small office floor plates to meet the needs of growing startups and small businesses as they expand to about 10 to 40 employees. Our office gets multiple calls per month from businesses that have graduated from the nearby 10 or 11 incubators and co-shared working spaces in the area, especially as they hire to meet about that 5th or 6th employee. Moreover, small office projects that have come to the market in the last year, such as United American Land's 397 Bridge Street, have leased up quickly with firms such as the Recur Center, Billy Cotton, and Propel that have relocated from Soho and other neighborhoods in Brooklyn. Again, many of these firms tell us that they've been needing office space at about 5,000 square foot or slightly larger spaces, and they'd like to benefit from the central location and proximity to a talented workforce. With office space catering specifically to these types of emerging firms with the small floor plates, 101 Fleet Place will help address a critical gap in the market and continued job growth in the district. There's also precedent for successful commercial density on narrow streets east of Flatbush Avenue Extension. The Clock Tower building, which is just 1 block northwest of the proposed project site, is a 8-story property with a wide variety of small creative tenants, including Arc Media and 100 Chicken Productions. It is also located on Gold Street, a 60-foot wide street similar to Fleet Place. Green Desk, a thriving co-working space home to a dozen or so entrepreneurs and small businesses, is also located across Fleet Place to the west. And of course, LIU's Brooklyn campus, which has significant office and institutional place, is located 1 block to the south. Again, we strongly feel that the new office proposed for 101 Fleet complements these existing uses, and the proposed 14-story height is compatible with the existing 15-story buildings along Myrtle Avenue and immediately adjacent University Towers. Again, we strongly support this project and feel that it will bring much-needed office to downtown Brooklyn.
Thank you, Ms. Yu. Questions? Thank you. Our next speaker is Bruce Jacobs, who will be followed by Abe Lesser.
Hello again, Bruce Jacobs, Coalition of Rockways, U.S. Navy veteran, 9/11 first responder, representative of the apprenticeship program for iron workers and carpenters. I don't like the idea of this living on a narrow street. There's too many big buildings being built up. Right over there, she says there's going to bring office space and all kind of stuff. There's plenty of office space in that neighborhood. The people in the brownstones in the back, they have a right also. We don't need 14 stories. You're looking for a zoning change. Why a zoning change? This is like, you know, like I said, it's easy to come in with money. The guy is right what he said, okay, it's bringing jobs. What kind of jobs? Yeah, he said, he's even saying he's representing a group with jobs. I'm talking about jobs that's going to bring union jobs, union wages, real jobs. Yeah, I represent projects in my neighborhood. And guess what? The people want jobs. That's a future. Not just a job. A job that's going to last and you're going to make instant money. That's nothing. For 2-3 years, we want a job for 20, 30 years that's going to bring you money, not just this. So the zoning to knock out and to use like a certain area as an excuse to build it when there's people on Fleet Street with brownstones and private houses, they also count. So the thought of it is this has to be a 14-story building that will block off that street, will cause more traffic and all kind of stuff. Yes, I'm for development, but to block off these people's houses, and I want to see a commitment for real jobs, not just, they say prevailing wage. When you subcontracted, and I know for a fact in my neighborhood, subcontracted, the guys are scared to talk to me because sometimes they go and they hire them for less and they tell them, hey, if you talk with the guy, we're going to get rid of you. I want a guarantee. I understand that it's not your job to get guarantees, but like I said, downtown Brooklyn is being, they say, built up. Long Island City, some of those apartments is very unaffordable, even if they call it affordable housing. Very high. The people have to have a place to live. I'm happy for, the built up of an area, but also I don't want to see these people that live on Fleet Street and live in the neighborhood. And like the guy said, I don't want to see the people from the projects be displaced, but I want real jobs for these people, not temporary. And I am worried about that narrow street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Our next speaker will be Mr. Lesser.
Good morning. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Abraham Lesser from the Lesser Group. Good morning, Commissioner Lago and all commissioners. I am privileged to tell you about the Lesser Group for a minute. We are a company that in the last 50 years, small, but we are very much involved in commercial development, small scale commercial development, all kinds of phases of the commercial office buildings, small, and ShopRite, and all kinds of community facilities. We used to own the small building on Flatbush Avenue, 340, that they built up now a big skyscraper. We had there a lot of small nonprofit organizations that when we sold the building, they told us when you have a small office complex in the area that could house nonprofits that could be affordable, we would very much want to come and join. So we figured a 13,000-foot plate that could easily give small nonprofits that are supported from other government agencies or from donations would be very amicable for these companies. I want to guarantee you that we're not in the housing business in any, I would say 5% of my whole portfolio is housing, has housing. I bought a finished apartment house in the Bronx, and I have a small development in the Borough Park of houses that is, I would say, less than 5% of my portfolio. I wasn't so successful in the housing anyway, so I guarantee you that I'm not planning to do a housing project in this area. I could also willing to share with you that we're going to stick to the smaller spaces, and we are committed to do only that and not housing definitely. So that was my main thing. And about the prior man that spoke about houses on Fleet, I don't know whether there's any houses on this Fleet Street, any Klein Brown houses. There's no buildings there almost, except for another bigger development. I mean, office building. So I'm again saying to you, you could be assured that I'm not going to do any housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lesser. Questions? Commissioner Dweck.
I'll just comment that I thank you for your commitment on that. And if we can have that, I don't agree. I agree with the agency, and I'm not a fan of restrictive declarations. But if we can have what you just said in writing, committing to the building of an office building with community facility in it, it would go a long way for me. Thank you very much.
I'm going to get in writing about not housing, a community facility. You know that. Related.
That's what you just said, but put it in a letter. I'm sure your attorney can have that done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Lesser.
Thank you.
If there are others who would like to be heard on this item, please come forward now. The public hearing is closed.
Calendar number 30, Borough of Manhattan, Community District 2, ULIP number C 190250ZSM, a public hearing in the matter of an application for the grant of a special permit concerning 419 Broadway.
There will be a 10-minute team presentation by Valerie Campbell, Michael Zweck-Bronner, and Casey Martinez.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Valerie Campbell, Kramer Levin. We're land use counsel to the owner of the property. Casey Martinez is from the owner, and Michael Zweck-Bronner is the architect. Here we go. This application requests a special permit pursuant to 74-711 of the zoning resolution to modify the restriction on ground floor uses under ZR 4214D and the height and setback regulations under 4343. The special permit would facilitate the historic restoration and continuing maintenance of an existing 3-story federal-style row house on the property and the development of a new commercial office building next door. The zoning lot is located on the northwest corner of Canal Street and Broadway. Both are wide streets. The lot area is a little over 6,000 square feet. It's in the M15 zoning district, the Soho Cast Iron district, and in Community Board 2. The maximum FAR is 5, and the proposed FAR is basically at 5, it's at 4.98 or 30,360 square feet. This slide shows the existing conditions. There are 3 buildings on the zoning lot. 2 of them, the 1-story building at the corner and the 2-story building on Canal Street, are not contributing buildings in the historic district and would be demolished. Both now have retail uses on the ground floor. The 3-story federal row house is at 423 Broadway, and it's a contributing building with retail use at the ground floor. The fact that the zoning lot is within the historic district and 423 Broadway is contributing makes the zoning lot eligible for this special permit. 423 Broadway was constructed in 1822 for Benjamin Lord. It always had a store on the ground floor with a dwelling above. It is a modified federal-style building, and its notable features include a sloped roof and an iron cornice. As a condition to the grant of the special permit, 423 Broadway will be subject to a restoration and continuing maintenance plan that will be memorialized in a restrictive declaration. This is some pictures of the existing landmark. It is structurally sound, but it's obviously in need of restoration. A lot of its features have been altered or damaged, and so it would be a complete restoration, including new windows, wood windows, a new roof, and the replacement of a non-historic aluminum storefront with a historically accurate wooden storefront. Michael is going to discuss the design of the new building.
So we're proposing an 8-story building that has been approved and reviewed by landmarks, and adjacent to it is the historic building right to the right. You can see there's a elevation on Canal Street and an elevation on Broadway. The Broadway ground floor is retail. On Canal Street is our office entrance. We're proposing use group 6 on the ground floor and in the cellar. And then, sorry, there we go. Here's a perspective looking down Canal Street. The historic building is on the right. The 8-story building is on the top, to the left. This is an as-of-right building. I'm sorry, this is not an as-of-right building. An as-of-right building would have a 15-foot setback. As-of-right building would be more like a wedding cake type of structure. LBC was more, they felt that this was a more appropriate design for the neighborhood, more contextual and respective of the other buildings in Soho. You can see here are the 2 massings, the as-of-right and our proposed massing. Our proposed massing, like I said, is more contextual and more in keeping with the rest of Soho. We felt the as-of-right building does have setbacks and is probably not in keeping with the context of Soho. Here is a section through the building. You can see we're asking for use group 6 in the ground floor and the cellar. It's an 8-story commercial building, and we're asking for a waiver on, we're protruding into the sky exposure plane. We have a proposed retail space of 5,170 square feet on the ground floor, and we're proposing 860 zoning square feet on the ground floor as well. The existing building and our new building will have a connection at the ground floor, an internal connection. And I think that's it. I think I'm turning this over.
Yeah,
back to
just
you.
maybe go backwards. The findings for a 74-711 special permit are that the use modification shall have minimal adverse effects on the conforming uses within the building and in the surrounding area. And we think that the proposed uses are consistent with existing ground floor commercial uses in Soho, particularly along Canal Street and Broadway, which are major shopping corridors. And in this case, they're actually replacing existing grandfathered ground floor retail uses that already exist on the zoning lot. The next finding is that the bulk modification shall have minimal adverse effect on the structures or open space in the vicinity in terms of scale, location, and access to light and air. And the proposed building, we think when you look at the streetscapes along both Broadway and Canal, is very much in keeping with the existing character, where the buildings have street walls and there's a mixture of building heights. And then you can see on the renderings, this is looking east on Canal, and Canal looking west, that there are taller buildings often located at the corners along Canal Street. And then along Broadway, there are many examples of taller loft buildings that are located adjacent to the smaller federal buildings. So that's really our presentation. I know that during the review session, the question came up about the subway stair, which exists at Canal and Broadway. And we do appreciate the community board and the borough president's desire for a relocated subway stair and ADA access, but it's really not feasible in a project of this scale. The zoning resolution only requires relocation of subway stairs for specified station and in special districts. And in almost every instance, the permitted floor area is much higher and can support the development can thus support the significant costs that the relocation entails. As far as we know, this requirement is not applicable to any zoning districts where the maximum FAR is as low at 5. And this is also a very small and constrained site that has already undergone review by the Landmarks Preservation Commission. A subway stair and elevator could not be located in the Landmark building and would take up almost half of the retail space in the new building. It would also require additional excavation, almost double what is planned, and it would be extremely difficult to engineer the building and to bring utilities into the building due to the location of the subway tunnels, sidewalk grates, and the water table. And Michael can go into more detail if the commissioners have questions about that. So that's, I think, the end of our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions.
I would note on behalf of the commission that the fact that the Landmarks Commission has approved is not dispositive. We're a separate body with separate jurisdiction.
No, I understand.
Questions from the commission? Commissioner Rumpershot.
Yes, hello. Thank you for the presentation. Monday, I had raised the question about egress from the cellar. I only saw one. Are you required to have two?
We're currently, that could be storage, so we're not required to have two. We could have a knockout slab and a second one out.
So that, just go into your cellar plan for a second.
Oh, I don't think we have a
I don't
cellar
think we
plan
have a cellar
here.
plan.
All right, so I'm just trying to,
But I think your occupancy right now does not require it.
Does not require it, yeah.
okay.
Other questions? Commissioner Levin.
Well, since Ms. Campbell offered him up, I fully appreciate and understand the difficulties that both the legal difficulties and the FAR difficulties and whatnot associated with adding a subway stair here. But nonetheless, it is a location that is pretty congested and that needs more subway access. So, Michael, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name, but could you elaborate? It sounds like you've looked at this.
I have looked at it. As you know, the subway is...
Tell us more about
right, so the subway is
engineering
passing,
complications.
The subway is passing right by our site.
Right. And does it go down the bed of Broadway?
Yes.
It's like right under Broadway. It's not under your site.
Right.
Okay.
And because of that, it's also cutting off, if we were to add a subway entrance and an elevator, because it is taking so much space of the ground floor footprint, it kind of limits the places where we could actually put POEs, like bring in all of our services. And that kind of really restricts us. There's there's grading and things like that along Canal Street, so it makes it very difficult to get any POEs off of Canal Street, and off of Broadway into our building, so they'd have to come off of Canal.
Okay.
And it is taking up pretty much all of our frontage, which is kind of critical for getting all the services into the building.
Okay. What thought have you given to, are there any changes that could be made to the existing subway stair? How does it relate to your design? Is it just going to stay the way it is? Are there?
I don't think there are any changes to that subway stair. It's sort of it has two stairways that go down to a platform and then a wider staircase. So I can understand that the community would like a larger staircase and an ADA access, but it's not so terribly narrow a stair as you find on some other stations, like the RRT along Broadway, on the west side.
Right, okay.
And there are also 3 other entrances on the other 3 corners to the subway.
Right. Including one across Broadway that happens to be in the building. I'm kind of curious about how that came to be, because it's a relatively new building.
That was prior to that building being built, right?
Yeah, that building dates back. It used to be a theater, and it was built with the entrance in there. And I think that the authority that built the subway actually sold that lot.
Interesting. Okay. All right. And so your office, the office building entrance is
Presently proposed on Canal Street.
on Canal, but at the western end of the property line, so you're clear of the subway stairs?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Burney.
I mean, I think the only way you would get subway entrance improvements on a project like this is if the MTA decided to partner up and actually bring capital money to the project and so on. Did that discussion ever take place?
No, it did not.
Because they do have a plan now to make more accessible stations around the city. I guess this wasn't one of the selected sites.
I do not think that the ownership has ever been contacted by the MTA about this site.
Other questions? Thank you to the applicant team. Our next speaker is Bruce Jacobs.
Good morning again. Bruce Jacobs, Coalition of the Rockaways, New York State, Medical and Religious Freedom, 9/11 first responder, 30 years New York City Transit. That's my expertise. You're talking staircase. Staircase under a big building could cause a lot of troubles. First of all, it's not ADA accessible. Second of all, there should be some kind of thing to make improvements on this staircase if you're going to allow a big building. They say it's in compliance with the neighborhood. Okay, I see it is. At least they're fixing up the old building next door. But to me, that staircase is very, very important. That could be millions and millions of dollars in lawsuits. Somebody or somebody falls down those stairs with this big building, big construction that's going on. I noticed, like they said, there's three entrances across the street. Across the street, not everybody could get across. There's seniors, there's old people, there's other people. The thought that they didn't reach out to the MTA to try to get some kind of capital funds to get that staircase done, even to put a little bit money to fix that staircase, to try to make sure that there's no kind of problem. To me, that's a big deal. Because in the safety, if there's any kind of complaint about that staircase, there's a reason for that. I know everybody's in for this, in for the big construction. Everybody wants big, giant buildings. Nobody cares about the small guy too much no more. But if, like I said, somebody gets killed going down those stairs because of this big, massive construction, of a 8-story building that they say is in compliance with all the other buildings, when you see there's a small building right next door, there's a problem to that. And when this building is being built, is this building going to be using, what kind of work detail are they going to have? Are they going to be using union apprenticeship programs? Are they going to use the prevailing wage, or are they going to subcontract out the job? But then that's another question. But getting back to the staircase, that's something that has to be looked at. One fall will cost more than this whole project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you. If there is anyone else interested in being heard on this project, now would be the time to come forward. The public hearing is closed.
Calendar number 31, Borough of Manhattan, Community District 7, ULIP number C 190390ZMM. A public hearing in the matter of an application for a zoning map amendment concerning 25 Central Park West.
Our first speaker will be Richard Lobel.
Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC. Good morning, Commissioners, Chair. So we're here today for these 25 Central Park West rezoning. The rezoning, which is located within the circled area, is currently an R10A district and has remained an R10A or an R10 district dating back to 1961. You may notice that the western portion of the circled area is located within the Lincoln Square Special District. That portion is also located within a C47 district. So although the 200 easternmost feet of this lot and building are located within an R10A, the westernmost portion is a C47 within the Lincoln Square Special District. So the proposal right now would be to rezone that frontage along Central Park West with a C25 commercial overlay. And what this would really accomplish is two things. The first is that there are currently 3 commercial units as well as doctor's offices located on that frontage. So despite the fact that it is currently zoned a residential district, there are 3 existing legal non-conforming commercial units within that space. And those spaces were confirmed as legal non-conforming, not merely by DOB, but by an action of BSA in which the commercial nature of those occupancies was challenged. BSA in December 2011 issued resolutions confirming that these were indeed valid continued commercial uses. The issue, of course, is that pursuant to Article 5 for existing grandfathered commercial uses, you're only permitted to continue with the existing uses, or if they drop down to another use group 6. And so that really is the crux of the application. Just by way of background and as far as the zoning district chosen, you can see here from the land use patterns in the area that there is, of course, a lot of commercial activity. This is within blocks of Broadway, a major commercial thoroughfare, within 2 blocks of the 59th Street Columbus Circle stop, as well as numerous commercial establishments, obviously in a very dense area. So the proposal here would be to change this district to a C25 district. And not only would this basically establish the existing non-conforming commercial uses, but it would allow an expansion of those commercial uses, and specifically, as we've done before at the commission, to allow for a PCE or gym use. The owners here have had great difficulties with the occupancy of that corner space on the southeast corner of the lot, and this would allow them to essentially accept tenancy from a commercial occupant, a PCE. Formerly, for example, Yoga Works was interested in the space but could not occupy the space given the existing lack of a C2 commercial overlay. So briefly, just to show you the layout, there's the southeast corner again as a 2,300 approximate commercial storefront, which would then be occupied by this commercial use, preferably PCE. I see that my time is ending, and I'd be happy to answer any questions with regards to the application.
Questions for Mr. Lobel? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Our next speaker is Bruce Jacobs.
Once again, Bruce Jacobs, Coalition of the Rockaways, supporter of New York State medical and religious freedom, U.S. Navy veteran, 9/11 first responder, 30 years New York City Transit, representative of the Iron Workers and the Carpenters Union, and really all unions. The idea of this sounds good, but I don't like the idea that there's two non-conforming residents in there. So what makes them, that they're gonna, now they come up with, they want to change the zoning. What kind of violations are these guys receiving? Now, why is there a non-conforming businesses in there? They should never have had that. The thought that there is no excuse for changing of the law to give them permission. If they already had some kind of law in there and they're non-conforming, there must be some kind of violations. I like to see the listing of it. They say they're doing it again, like we did once before, they say to put a gym in there. That's an easy way to say with today's market, with stores, it's very rough. I like to see, I don't understand that how these doctors' offices were in the building and they weren't complying. So now they're going to get a special break because they're going to change the zoning law. To me, that's not a fair thing. Then, it should be really checked into it. And then he says something about that they're going to make more public, more businesses. The idea is I like to see the violations checked into before they approve this kind of thing, because this will give everyone an excuse. I could go open up a doctor's office inside my house, and I could say, hey, whatever, it's non-compliant. And then later on, a few years, go hire a fancy lawyer and say, hey, I want to change it to conforming. I want to see the violations, because if there are violations, I want to make sure that this isn't just a change of zone. And why they wait so long to change the zoning? Is it because Central Park West is worth millions and millions of dollars now? Or nobody bothered them? I just want to make sure that it's correctly done. Otherwise it sounds good, but there's things that have to be checked. And I wanted to say on the previous thing that I'm a good friend of Eric Adams, and if he had any kind of thing, there's some kind of problem.
If you could limit your testimony to the item before us.
Have a nice day.
Thank you. If anyone else is interested in speaking on this item, please come forward. The public hearing is closed.
Calendar numbers 32 and 33, Borough of Manhattan, Community District 10. Calendar number 32, ULIP number C 190427 HAM. Calendar number 33, ULIP number C 190428 PQM, a public hearing in the matter of applications for UDAP designation, project approval, and disposition of city-owned property, and acquisition of property concerning the NME 3 West 140th and 45th Streets project.
We will have a 10-minute presentation by Vianda Simmons, Macomb Punter, and available for questioning to representatives of the architects, Edwin Vasquez and Shira Gomi.
Good afternoon, Chair Lago, Vice Chair Knuckles, and City Planning Commissioners. Again, my name is Vianda Simmons. I'm the Director of the Manhattan Planning Division at HPD. And as mentioned, I'm joined by our development partners, Harlem Congregation for Community Improvement, and Off-Gang Architects. I'm pleased to testify in support of Northern Manhattan Equities 3 project, otherwise known as NME 3, which is a scattered site project located at 207-209 West 140th Street between Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Boulevard and Frederick Douglass Boulevard, and 304 West 150th Street, located between Frederick Douglass Boulevard and Bradhurst Avenue in the Central Harlem neighborhood of Community Board 10. The proposed project will consist of 2 new construction buildings with a total of approximately 52 affordable homeownership cooperative units developed under HPD's Open Door program. The 140th Street site is located on Block 2026, Lot 24 and 25, and will be 6 stories with approximately 21 co-op units, and the 150th Street building, located on Block 2045, Lot 98, will be 12 stories with approximately 31 co-op units. The sites are currently 2 privately owned properties, which were previously conveyed to the development team as part of an accelerated UDAP process where housing was constructed, and the subject sites were maintained as vacant open space. The land use actions include the acquisition of privately owned property and UDAP designation and approval of city-owned property and disposition of city-owned property. The new buildings will be developed as of right with a zoning district of R7-2 at the 140th Street site and R8 at the 150th Street site. Some of the residential amenities will include an inner courtyard, outdoor recreational space, laundry facilities, and bike storage unit. We appreciate your consideration of this ULURP application, and thank you for the opportunity to present today. I will now turn over the presentation to Malcolm Punter, who is CEO and President of Harlem Congregation for Community Improvement.
Thank you, Vianda. Good morning. Again, my name is Malcolm Punter. As Vianda said, I'm the President and Chief Executive Officer of Harlem Congregations for Community Improvement. We also known as ACCI. ACCI was created in 1986 to address the blight and crime in the Harlem community, specifically in this immediate area that we're talking about our project today, the Bradhurst section of Harlem. As you know, the Bradhurst section was designated as an urban renewal area in approximately around 1996. And that designation was to last until 2036. ACCI was conveyed the properties through a competitive process around 1990, and these projects consist of about 21 buildings, of which most, if not all of them, were gut rehabilitated and enrolled into the low-income housing tax credit program. That program, as you know, ends after the restrictions on that program typically end after the 15th year of development. But because of the staggered nature of the development, those buildings did not exit the program to about 20 years. That means that the buildings were suffering from obsolescence. In 2014, we worked with HPD to rehabilitate the building and then re-enter the buildings, about 608 units, into the low-income housing program under HPD's participating loan program. We were able to make sure that no resident was displaced. We did in-unit, in-suite rehabilitations. No one, unless they needed to relocate temporarily because of illness, was relocated. And in the entire package, it was phased into 3 phases. The first phase was 399 units, and then the second phase of approximately 207 units. There was always envisioned in this project a 3rd phase. So the first 2 phases, again, I emphasize that they were consistent with the low-income housing tax credit affordable housing scheme. That means that 50% of AMI, and then as ACCI's mission has always been from its inception to develop very low-income housing to moderate income housing, because we found that many of our residents who benefited from the low-income housing program in 1990s now have become gainfully employed, and now their income's increased. So I have a family that I usually talk about. It's a 2-family household of 6 children who currently live in one of our buildings that are low-income housing tax credit, and the gentleman is a MTA engineer. He drives the train. He makes about $100,000 or more. He cannot get out of a very restricted, doubled-up apartment, 2-bedroom with 6 children, because he can't afford a luxury condominium, and he can't qualify for a 60% of AMI unit. So he's stuck in this apartment that's really dangerous. His only alternative as a city employee is to move to the suburbs, maybe in New Jersey. I don't think it is our mission to move people out that wish to live in Harlem. So we wanted to make sure that we, out of this 608 units, design a small portion of it as moderate income housing and home ownership specifically. So we're presenting 52 units of home ownership in the Bradhurst area. In addition to that, HCCI, and these are the lots that were always part of the package when the buildings were conveyed in 1990, and that's on West 140th Street. And this is the lot on West 150th Street. And in the context, these are 21 buildings that are scatter site and 2 vacant lots that we wish to do home ownership on. Next slide. And this is the development program for the 52 units, 1 studio, 21 bedrooms, 19 2-bedrooms, and 12 3-bedrooms. We have a number of people who attend HCCI's first-time homeowner program. We have it, which we hold on a monthly basis. We have 60 participants per month in that program, and they're all residents of the immediate area. They are either single income or dual income households. They really want to stay in the New York City area, particularly their beloved Harlem, and they need some production that's targeted toward them. We've already addressed the luxury market in Harlem, and I think we've done, although we can do more in the low income, but we haven't really targeted the middle income. So these are the ranges that we're targeting. And I want to emphasize that the income levels for home ownership that we're presenting are the lowest income home ownership levels that are possible in order for someone to carry a moderate mortgage. So the studios will be at 80 to 110%, 1-bedrooms the same, and these are the income qualifying ranges that we anticipate. And this is an example of a home ownership program. You can see that there's wall-to-wall attendees. I've invited all of our community board members. I invited our elected officials to attend those meetings. They happen on Tuesday and Thursday evenings from September to June. It's a 4-week rolling admissions type of a program, and it's really award-winning. We're backed by HUD and then the Mortgage Coalition and other funders because people are really interested in taking ownership of the community that they live in, and we like to accommodate them. So in terms of the buildings will, of course, be 504 compliant, handicap, outdoor recreation, and because these were open space, we're going to replace that open space with outdoor recreation in the rear of the building, so there will be no displacement of the open space, and then we'll have bike amenities such as parking spaces, laundry facilities, and then, of course, it'll be ADA accessible. And these are the floor plans for the grade level building. As you can see, it's about 34 feet in the rear of open space where the residents will have access to, and then the floor plans. And that's what's ground floor plan for West 140th Street. The elevations, West 140th Street. This is the building further uptown on 150th Street. The same thing, we're going to have an internal, two open spaces, one internal and then one in the rear. And this is the elevation and sort of the renderings as we design. We have Off-Gang Architects, who's a wonderful architect, and they've done a few projects in New York City as well as in Harlem. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Vice Chair Knuckles, thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Mr. Punter, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Likewise.
I appreciate your anecdote about the train operator. I think justifiably, lots of city and state resources are focused on so-called low-income families. Not enough attention, I think, is given to two-income families and families that are working but are still struggling to find home ownership opportunities. So I salute HCCI for your continuing work in that area. I don't know if I should ask you or your colleague from HPD about community preferences. And I know I guess there's litigation that is ongoing about that. But with regard to this project, which is in Community Board 10, right?
Correct,
Are there any preferences for residents of Community Board 10 with regard to applying for this?
Yes, and you're correct, there's ongoing litigation, but the preferences still remain today that 50% go to Community Board 10 residents.
And that's is that a lottery or first come, first served?
It's based upon our new system, Housing Connect, and that's a lottery system.
Thank you.
Commissioner Marin.
So thank you both for the presentation. And I wanted to also acknowledge the fact that it's enlightening to hear that you're acknowledging the fact that there are challenges with family size, unit size, income as it relates to the availability of units for homeowners. I also really want to applaud you. We don't see many homeownership deals. And it's really enlightening and exciting to see these homeownership deals coming on board. I guess one of my questions is, which is the term sheet that you're using? Is it the open door term sheet?
The open door.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the open door term sheet, yes.
Okay. So that's great, and I know that there have been some challenges with that, but it's good to hear that there is some movement in the homeownership effort by HPD to get some homeownership units back into these communities. So one of the photos that you showed has an interior courtyard between two buildings. I will assume that the existing building that's there is a building that you own?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I'm just really, honestly, I'm so excited to see the fact that there is home ownership. And this is something that we don't see a lot, and it's nice to see this in communities where it's needed. People do not want to leave their communities. They want to be homeowners. They want to stay, and it's something that I think is very welcome. So thank you very much.
I will add that this is the first open door homeownership program in Central Harlem.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the program, and I know the challenges that you've had in terms of closing deals with the open door term sheet. So it is a welcome and refreshing effort, and I certainly applaud it. Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Burney.
Oh, thank you again. I just had one comment about the architecture. When I was looking at the West 140th Street building, I liked what I saw. There's some picking up the cornice line, some attempt to reflect the fenestration of the existing building. But when we get to 150th Street, we've kind of lost that narrative. We're not really thinking about the cornice line. It's a very vertical emphasis. So I wonder why that change and whether we couldn't have more of the former rather than the latter.
I can respond, but I also have an architect that would like to talk about it from.
If you could speak into the microphone. Thank you.
I certainly would like to give a comment to you in response, but we have the architects here that I think would want to give a more technical response than I can give as trained architects. But West 140th Street and West 150th Street are technically very different parts of Central Harlem, and particularly different parts of Bradhurst. If you look at West 140th Street, all of the buildings are conforming and consistent. West 150th Street takes on the characteristic of north of West 145th Street. And all of the infill projects north of 145th Street on the west side of Frederick Douglass Boulevard, which really is along Bradhurst Avenue, which takes advantage of the very beautiful Jackie Robinson Park, New York's Parks Department Park, which has a pool, a lot of trees, very, very welcoming. And in fact, HCCI on an annual basis holds a family day of unity in the park where about 700 members of the community come out and enjoy the park. 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, you couldn't do that. I grew up there in Harlem, went to school in that neighborhood. Bradhurst Park and Bradhurst Avenue and Jackie Robinson Park was a no-go zone. We couldn't go there because it was drugs, crime, and everything negative under the sun. And that's why sort of these open spaces were prevalent in the blocks because, it was safer. We've successfully created the Jackie Robinson Parks Conservancy, and that park is now open for business. People enjoy it, and everyone on Bradhurst Avenue spends their time in the park. They swim in the morning. There's an adult swim very early in the morning, and children enjoy that park, and community organizations do it. So all of the sort of natural recreation is happening there. And quite naturally, when you have home ownership, people love to have views of the park, and they love to be a part of that contextualization. So everything above 145th Street on the western side of Frederick Douglass Boulevard has become a little, taking advantage of the park area. So we want to do the same with this building. The Langston, the Ellington on the park, the Sutton on the park, and even one of our tax credit buildings that were part of the Ellington and Sutton package also has some elevations that benefit from that area. So we're not just doing it for luxury or sort of market rate or co-ops. We also allow the rental units to benefit from the asset of the park.
Yeah, no, I accept all that. I'm really just making a very simple point, which is that I could see taking the 140th Street building, putting it into 150th Street, a little setback, add a few floors, and there you go. You have a much more sort of contextual design solution.
Well,
good afternoon, Commissioners and Chair. My name is Shiva Gomi. I'm with Afghan Architects. I'm the Director of the Planning Department, and I can just comment on the context note that you have. In terms of as of right height that we're going for 150th Street, because it's sitting at the R8 zone, we're going to the under 12 feet height. And in terms of blending the proposed building with the neighborhood, we're using a lot of horizontal and vertical elements on the elevation. And also, if you look at the center piece of the main facade, you will see the same size fenestration as the existing context in the neighborhood. So we're trying to blend in as much as possible with the new design. And also, by going higher, we can provide more affordable housing units. So we're using the maximum zoning that is offered on that area. So yeah, I think the material also that we're using, if you look around the neighborhood, it's kind of the same color, and we're going with the cement panels that also are recyclable and they're more energy saving. So we're trying to come up with more technology, like a better technology for the new design, and also respect the existing colors in the neighborhood so we can blend in. So height, material, and fenestration are the main focus of the new design that we're using here.
Well, except that the color of the material, from your renderings anyway,
I think it's a little,
not
yeah.
consistent.
Well, if you
and also, I think that, you say, I mean, the 140th Street facade does most of the things that you just said, aside from the color. And I just felt that another attempt could be made to keep that theme on 150th Street. I understand, I'm not arguing with the height, that's the height you have to go to, but you could introduce an element that picks up the cornice line. You could have a small setback that we've seen in other projects. There would be other ways to support that contextual approach that you're describing.
I agree with you. And I think what we're trying to do here, if you look around the neighborhood, if you walk towards Frederick Douglass and West 151st, you will see the same context going on in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So we're not, again, in terms of what we're proposing here, it might look a little different comparing to the adjacent properties. But if you look at the corner lot at the beginning of the street, it's kind of the same exact. Maybe that the renderings is not presenting, it's not like complying with what you're saying, but that's what we're trying to accomplish in terms of material and colors.
Ms. Gomi, I think it could be quite helpful if you would be able to introduce from Google Earth, wherever, shots of the context around 140th Street and around 150th Street. What we have now before us is just that rendering.
Okay, I agree, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Marin.
Mr. Punter, if you will, if at all possible, if you can provide a matrix for each building that identifies unit size, income band, and AMIs, that would be very helpful.
Will do.
Thank you.
And yes, Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, I also have a question for Mr. Punter. It relates to the comments in the community board's recommendation and also the borough president's about the importance of really working to be sure that as many local residents have an opportunity to move into this building as possible. Sure. And so I guess I have a two-part question. The images you showed when you were describing your home buyer education programs showed a room full of people, way more that could ever fit into this building. So the first part of the question is, how are you really going to work extra hard to be sure that local residents have an opportunity not only for the 50% community preference, but for all of the units in this building. I know there's some art in the marketing aspect of these projects. And second off, what happens to the graduates of your homebuyer program? What other opportunities are they finding in the neighborhood? Where else are they likely to be able to find opportunities?
So there is a lack of production on the homeownership front. HCCI just completed a building on East 129th Street. That's between Madison and Park. While it was a small building, it was through an HPD ANCP program. It was successful. We rehabilitated the buildings to 10 apartments. There were three bedrooms with 1.5 bathrooms. And we also had a room full of people interested in the marketing phase, but we've already completed the marketing. We've also in queue working with HPD on a 5-building, 75-unit co-op structure, and we anticipate to close construction financing on that project in June of 2020. So right now, HCCI has about 250 some odd homeownership units in production, various stages. So those people that are ineligible for this building, we'll also field them into our other opportunities.
So this education program is geared toward people who might be able to move into your properties, not generally.
No, we actually we prefer they move into our properties because we think we can provide them with the best quality housing compared to other groups. But we do work with other groups, and we have a good relationship with UHAB, as well as other non-for-profit homeownership CDCs, West Harlem Group, and we, if we can't serve them, we send them to others, our sister organizations.
Good, important work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments? If I could ask Ms. Gomi, when I looked at the drawings, it seemed that it was a relatively short floor-to-ceiling height. Could you address that?
I can answer that question if I may. Ed Vasquez, Wolfgang Architects. All of the apartments within both buildings will have a minimum HPD compliant floor-to-ceiling height for all habitable rooms, living rooms, bedrooms, etc. Where you have a floor to underside plank, the typical floor height will be approximately 8'8", and all other areas will be a minimum of 7'6" ceiling height.
We're accustomed to seeing generally a higher floor-to-ceiling height. What were the considerations?
Considerations for ceiling height, it's based mostly on the construction. Typically, block and plank buildings are generated with finishing on the underside of the plank itself, which tends to yield a higher floor-to-ceiling height versus just a sheetrock ceiling, which is typically finished at 8 feet.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Other questions? I'll thank the applicant team and note that if anyone else would like to be heard on this matter, now would be the time. The public hearing is closed.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Jacobs?
My name is Bruce Jacobs, Coalition of Rockaways, U.S. Navy vet, 9/11, first responder, 30th. We need more people like this. I am for the home ownership. I wish these guys were in Rockaway. I have one of those homes. I went to one of those seminars in the Rockaways. So, I'm for home ownership on any kind of income. I like the thought that he did mix up the two-family incomes because, you need for people that are working, just because they're working don't mean that they have money because they have their expenses. So with this kind of project, I don't really have much of a argument because the guy is looking for home ownership. When people have home ownership, they care about the building. Now, the height of the other building in between the other two buildings, I did want to get a clarification on that. But The program itself sounds very, very good, and I wish there was more programs like that because home ownership is the way to go. And I like the idea that they're including all incomes. Like the story he said about a train operator. I know plenty of guys in transit, they make two incomes, they have no money, they have children. They also deserve to be able to stay in the neighborhood where they were brought up. At least they only had 52 families, but that's a start. That's something that I like, because home ownership over just because it's low income is not, the answer is his program. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? If anyone else would want to be heard? The public hearing is closed.
Calendar numbers 34 through 37, Borough of Manhattan, Community District 10. Calendar number 34, ULIP number C, 190434ZMM. Calendar number 35, ULIP number N, 190433ZRM. Calendar number 36, ULIP number C, 190435ZSM. Calendar number 37, ULIP number C, 190436ZSM. A public hearing in the matter of applications for zoning map and zoning text amendments and for the grant of special permits concerning La Hermosa.
We'll have a 10-minute presentation by an applicant team comprised of Jennifer Dixon, Daniel Feliciano, Daniel Kaplan, and available for questioning, Robert Kulikowski.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Lago and Commissioners. My name is Jennifer Dixon. I'm from Herrick Feinstein, representing the applicant, La Hermosa Christian Church. I'm joined by the Reverend Daniel Feliciano, the pastor of La Hermosa, Dan Kaplan from FX Collaborative, the project architects, and Robert Kulikowski, who will be available for questions. We're going to walk you through a presentation that we hope gives you some background on the church's goals, history, details on the requests that are before you today. But before we get into that, I'm going to turn it over to Pastor Feliciano, who's going to say a few words. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Daniel Feliciano, Senior Pastor of La Hermosa Christian Church. On behalf of La Hermosa, I'd like to thank the commissioners for allowing us to make this presentation and to talk about a project that really is needed by our church, and it's exciting us. La Hermosa has deep roots in Harlem and in New York City for many years. It is the mother church of Hispanic churches of our denomination, the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, which has over 3,600 churches across the nation, and 34 of those churches are in New York. We have 90 congregants, and through the activities, faith activities and activities for the community, we serve about 1,800 people in the span of a year. The project that we're proposing means the survival of our church. Many churches in the Harlem area are closing their doors. We don't want to close our doors. We want to continue making our presence known, serving the congregation and serving our community. If we don't have a real solution, we might end up closing our doors, and we don't want to do that. We're proud and excited about the project because it provides not only to our church but our community three distinctive and exciting benefits. Number one, it secures the future of our parish, creating an inspiring and beautiful space to connect with our community and our faith. It establishes a partnership with a top-tier Harlem-based music school, the Manhattan School of Music, to create a free music education, to create a program with free music education for Harlem children and youth. And number three, it will also contribute to our community with affordable housing. And at this time, I would like to turn it over to our team of professionals so that they can explain our proposal in detail. Thank you.
Thank you. So quickly, just to orient you, La Hermosa is located at 5 West 110th Street. This is located on the corner of 5th Avenue, Central Park, and Duke Ellington Frawley Circle. The property is owned by La Hermosa. They have a rich history in Harlem and have been at this location since 1960. Prior to being occupied by La Hermosa, the building was occupied by a jazz hall and was an important component of the Harlem music scene. Historically, in addition to hosting services for the congregation, La Hermosa has always been very community-oriented, opening its doors to community organizations, seniors, running a soup kitchen, hosting music classes for children, and doing other activities. However, as Pastor Feliciano mentioned, the building has deteriorated significantly in recent years. There are steep steps making parts of the building inaccessible. The heating and cooling systems are failing, and it is difficult for them to continue to stay in this space. So to provide a viable path forward for them and allow them to continue with their community programming, the church is embarking on a redevelopment process. This proposal allows the church to permanently remain on the site while allowing for redevelopment that will fund community programming. La Hermosa, as mentioned, is the applicant, so they can direct the process, ensuring that their mission is fulfilled and that the plan accommodates sufficiently the community space that they are envisioning. Importantly, it also allows them to provide space for a music school at the ground floor. It's an important component of the church's mission to help children. To that end, they are partnering with the Manhattan School of Music, a world-class Harlem institution, to provide free music education program for local children, which will operate out of the ground floor. This not only builds upon the site's musical legacy, but will activate the ground floor at this space. So turning to the site zoning and context, it is split between two districts, an R8 and an R7-2 zone. It has a seven-sided shape, which is very constrained. It's a very unique location, but the shape itself leads to some difficulties. Some views of the church's property. There's very mixed context, including the church's three-story building, the Schomburg Towers across the street, and other surrounding developments, including the recently approved Sendero Verde. So the existing zoning results in an inefficient building with no viable space for the church or music school, and there is no inclusionary housing component today. The actions that are before you are to expand the C19 district to cover the church's property and 200 feet into the block. We believe that this is appropriate given the C19 district across the street and the C4 district, catty-corner to the church. In this unique location, we think that the wide circle in the surrounding context is appropriate for that. We're asking for a zoning and text amendment to apply the MIH program. We are pursuing option 1 at this site, which will result in 25% of the site's residential floor area, or approximately 50 of the units that we're proposing to be affordable at 60% of AMI. We're asking for a special permit to modify bulk regulations, which Dan will get into, and a special permit to waive the parking. This site is very well served by transit. There are 2 subway stations, and the vast majority of people actually walk to church today. There are less than 5 cars in the parking lot. So with that, I will turn it over to Dan.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, good afternoon. Dan Kaplan, FX Collaborative Architects. I just want to cover 3 things this morning before we take questions. Number 1 is the massing and the choices that we made in terms of that. Number 2 is the internal organization. And number 3 is the relationship of this building to the activation of the circle. So when we start with the massing, really the first thing was the height and the appropriateness of the height at this location. It is the northeast corner of the park. It's 2 wide streets with Sendero Verde, with the Schomburg Towers. The 400-foot height, as you see in the building on the left, creates this cluster at this very important point in the city. This diagram really informed us a lot how we crafted that location of that tower and why it's located the way it is on the site. Where number 3 is on the exhibit. The first thing was to have a sort of spiraling counterclockwise movement of the towers up to this west, so you let southwest light into the circle. Secondly, creating a east-west slab for the building with the Schomburg Towers to the east, created a gateway to Fifth Avenue to the north. And third, it created a frontal situation of the building that fronted onto Central Park. The massing really addresses it. By setting it back about, the tower back about 60 feet, we allow a more mid-rise, low-rise, walk-up scale of Central Park North to cap and create the image on the circle, really address the scale of the circle. So in 3 dimensions, this is the view, aerial view looking north. The first was this notion of the stepping up of the towers to about 400 feet, about the height of Sendero Verde. The second was the stepping from the west in 3 or 4 interlocking volumes that move from west to east, creating a culmination on Fifth Avenue. That Fifth Avenue mass is set back 10 feet from the building property line of Fifth Avenue, and that and Schaumburg create a real gateway to the north. And as I said before, this orientation allows a fronting of the building onto Central Park in the way traditionally buildings have done around the park. And then finally, by setting a portion, by setting the building back, a portion of the podium can come out and really address the circle. It really is in scale between 60 and 70 feet in terms of the envelope definition. It really is in scale with the Central Park North street wall. Just switching gears to the insides, I think there's a little bit of a misconception that really the community facility is quite large. It's about 37,000 square feet and takes the entire podium, save for the entrances of the to the residential up, and really that creates a really nice large community facility. And the tower mid-block allows for long span spaces to be located along the circle. Those include a forum, which is a public mixing bowl, if you will, the sanctuary and music hall at the second floor, and then classrooms on the terrace capped by an amenity terrace above. Finally, just a couple more images. One is this is the view from Duke Ellington Circle. We've taken those programmatic elements and we've really used them to activate the circle, a very transparent ground floor, a screened second floor, a terrace on the third, recessed terrace on the third floor, and then finally the...
Thank you.
Trying to get that in.
Really close.
Really close.
Commissioner Bernie.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Could you say a little bit more about the facade on Duke Ellington?
Thank you very much. Yes, and just really, maybe I can use it. Well, really the idea was to take this forum on the ground floor, which is really for art shows, for lobby, for the music school entrance and the church entrance to be sort of this public-facing space, very transparent. The second floor, which is really the sanctuary and the music hall, would be screened so that it's transparent to the street, but also screened from a solar point of view, so it's not going to be just closed with blinds. The third floor has a setback terrace, and then above that is really a terrace for the residential. In sort of bookending that is a steeple, with a solid element and a glass element. And I just wanted to address, it came up, I believe, in some of the earlier testimony about the Bethel Church to the west. There is zoning floor area and envelope assigned to them. Within this, it allows them to build up to approximately 60 feet to marry with the cornice line so that they could do a similar improvement to their site that we could. And I also, in terms of the facade, part of the idea of screening this was in the evening hours that the building would act as a beacon and a real gateway and a real symbol of this community facility on the circle, and a gateway up to Harlem. That's
Other
really
questions?
Just a sort of second question.
Yep.
And I do appreciate the attempt to sort of make a completion of the circle. It's a tough little place, Duke Ellington Circle. It's not quite what it could be, but it's certainly, I see that you're trying to help. But going back to the setbacks on the tower again, could you go back to that diagram where you had the setbacks? Well, okay. So one wonders why you would have a sheer drop on Fifth Avenue rather than provide the setbacks there so you don't get quite such a abrupt vertical, because the setbacks on the west side not really helping you in that respect.
Well, we've had we looked at any number of options, and we had a lot of discussions with staff, and it really, the thought was primarily this is a south-facing slab building, but then secondarily, it seemed important to sort of have an echo of the stepping of the the circle, but also really address, since it's the northeast corner of the site, really step down diagonally towards the park. It also begins to make a scale transition towards the mid-block. And regarding the sheer volume on Fifth Avenue, Schaumburg does something very similarly, as does Sendero Verde, and it just felt from a compositional point of view to have the sort of stepping from the west up, and then really this bookend that really anchored the form made a lot of sense. And then I just want to reiterate that the whole entire package is set back 10 feet from the Fifth Avenue street line, so that really there is a relief, there is light and air, and it's not really a crowding of the sidewalk.
But you have that little counterclockwise vortex that you described.
Right.
And so one could imagine the setbacks being consistent with that unraveling.
Right, so this was seen as sort of a counter, like sort of up and down, you know, a sort of counter move. And we some of our earlier schemes had more of a straight up and down, and it was really deemed to be better, more appropriate to have a series of steps that really addressed the southwest into the park, into the western portion of the Central Park North frontage.
And have there been any wind tunnel studies to see what the wind effect of the pedestrian experience on Fifth Avenue might be with such a tall facade?
No, there has not. There eventually will be for the structure, and we can do a pedestrian analysis. Generally, what we would expect to do anyway is a canopy or something at the entrance to the residential, which is there to mitigate any discomfort.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Levin.
I have a whole lot of questions.
Yeah.
Where to start? One is just to ask more about the programming. You've mentioned the Manhattan School of Music. Are they committed to this project? What's the state of affairs there? The second is about the development process for the affordable housing. Who's going to be developing that? And I guess it gets to the bigger development question. Who's the development partner here? Is the church doing this all by itself? In which case, this is a pretty risky proposition at this stage of affairs. How do you address that?
So just to answer the first question about the Manhattan School of Music, it was it was an important component for the church to have the music school, and so they were looking for a partner in this. They have partnered relatively recently with the Manhattan School, so there is an agreement there, and they are committed to doing it. We do have a speaker who will be speaking from the Manhattan School of Music today, so she will be able to speak to that as well. But I think everybody on both sides is very excited about it, and this is something that is part of the programming moving forward on that. In terms of the developer, the church, as mentioned, is right now is the applicant. There is no developer. They expect to enter into a process after the ULURP is completed to find a developer, but there is not a specific partner on board. That developer will build the residential, portion of the building, including the affordable housing. And we felt that it was important to go through this process to get the community programming, as part of the approval, and then to partner with the developer afterwards. We're pretty confident that that partnership will be made and that the project will get built.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's a candid and honest answer, but I think there are so many unknowns in thinking about a development of this scale at this very early stage that I think that underpins some of the concerns that you heard at Community Board 10 and at the Borough President's Office. Normally, we see a ULURP in which some organization committed to the development is also a partner in the risk that's involved in the ULURP process, and that's missing here, and I think it puts a tremendous burden on the church. Thank you, Dan, for addressing my question about Bethel. Good to know that they are not being completely stripped of development potential. And then I guess I'd just finally ask a technical question. I notice in the land use records there's a restrictive declaration that limits this property to use by the church, for church uses. Is that an impediment to development here? How are you going to deal with that?
No, because, you know, the property will continue to be used by the church. So if we need to, you know, make a modification to that to allow for the additional uses, then that is something that we will be able to do.
Have you entered into discussions with the other party to that declaration about also including market rate housing?
Yes, we're kind of, you know, fully aware of that, and you know, yes, that is something that we're aware of and will be addressing.
Okay. Who is the other party to the declaration?
I can follow up with more information on that because I'm not the one who's dealing with it directly, but I know that there are people who are dealing with that.
I have a copy of it right here.
Commissioner Edie?
Hi, good afternoon. Quick question. Regarding, you'd made reference to finding a developer to build a residential part. Would the developer build the entire site, or are they two separate components?
I'm sorry?
Do you want me to do it?
Sure, if you want to.
So the final details will be to be determined, but preliminarily, the developer will build of course, the apartment house, but since they're so integrated, they'll build a core and shell of the church music school space, and then part of the proceeds will go, and the church will do the fit out of the space themselves.
Okay, just follow. And obviously, we're a long way from there, obviously, but it's very important because there's an example across the street where that didn't happen, where that the proceeds are sufficient to build out the finished spaces for the church and the music school and any other components, because the last thing you want is to build a residential tower and then not have the proceeds to build out the other components of the property as well.
So we've put a lot of thought into this, and we understand the concerns that you've expressed and the community has expressed about, you know, the fact that the church is dealing with this right now. So the idea is that there will be a series of agreements. There will be an agreement between the church and the developer that will be something that's up front. The money will be in an endowment, and it will be specifically designated towards the church. There will be a separate designation for the music school. So we're going to do everything, you know, up front in a transparent manner to, you know, ensure that when that agreement is made with the developer, that the components that we're talking about right now are going to be included within that.
No, I appreciate that. And you know, oftentimes institutions in this situation get the proceeds and then are responsible for building out their own space. Mm-hmm. It might be worth looking at taking less in terms of proceeds, but then requiring the developer to build out the space as well, because you know, sometimes costs go up and things happen and you find out the monies you thought would be sufficient to build out your space are not, and you're left with an empty space, and the developer has gone and did what they had to do, but you don't have what you were hoping to get out of this. So just thought for consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments? Commissioner Levin.
I apologize for taking a second swing at this, but I have previously expressed in the review sessions concerns about the integrity of how what's being proposed here relates to the rest of Central Park North. Dan, you do a very poetic job of describing the circling upwards from the very large-scale buildings to the east. But particularly when looked at from the perspective of Central Park, there is a striking integrity across from Frederick Douglass Circle on the other end to here, striking integrity of both older buildings and some new buildings that poke up, but within a scale of the R8 buildings. In particular, I think the new building that's just being finished in Frederick Douglass Circle on the on the east side of the circle is really successful in solidifying the circle, nailing it down. I realize that this circle is much more compromised with larger buildings to the east, but it just seems like this is a missed opportunity for knitting the circle back together. And I would also observe that New York City, Manhattan in particular, has a rich history of churches being incorporated into residential buildings. I can understand the church's desire to stand alone by itself, but that's not the way churches are built in New York. And this poses real challenges for the streetscape, I think.
Well,
So that's what's on my mind. It's not so much a question, but just what's on my mind about this.
I was the architect for the Frederick Douglass.
Oh, there's a reason it looks so good.
I can address some of the differences. And also, I do want to address this notion of the separation of identities versus the over-under of the church and residential identities. So first of all these blocks from Central Park North to 111th Street are about 25 feet narrower than typical because there was a widening of Central Park North. So they're thinner, so there's less, they're less deep. Secondly, that project had basically the full frontage or the full depth from 110th to 111th. We have basically a big chunk taken out of the northeast corner of our site. And then finally, I think it is really what I call a walk-up scale. It's basically 5 to 6 stories in general on the north side of Central Park, on Central Park North, that goes across. You can see it in that slide, really, the building all on the left with the white fire escapes is very emblematic of the scale. So our sense was, the first move of the building, the tall building faced setback and addressing the park, and the low-rise building really addressing and capping off that street scale was more driven by urban design concerns as much as it was from an individual identity. Once we had made that move, it really made a lot of sense for the long span spaces of the church to be, and also the desire for transparency and really sort of dialogue with the circle, to have it really feel like it's separate or pulled out or have a stronger, more independent identity. I really do come back to this drawing, which I think is probably the best diagram we've made on the project, which is, we're taking that lower piece across, making that anchor and give it the scale of the circle, and then really setting the tower back so it really is more like a traditional Central Park facing building. I hope that addressed your.
Commissioner Burney.
Just one other quick thing. If you go back to the last slide again with the facade. So have you subtly inserted the FX Collaborative logo into the end of your client's church here, or am I
we have to do that every time. That's that's part of our agreement. But this is the La Hermosa's Mother Church's logo, and what we've done, and it is the is it the St. Andrew's cross, thank you, which is a diagonalized piece, and we felt with the, we had a challenge with the sun control and creating some sort of sense of shading within the sanctuary space, but also creating some sort of transparency to it. So we had this sort of brise soleil baguette type vertical arrangement, and we carved in the St. Andrew's cross into it.
So any relation is purely coincidental.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. No. We changed our name to be once we got. Yeah. That's yeah.
With respect to the church next door, the agreement with respect to leaving them the floor area to be able to go to 6 stories, that's entirely contractual. It could change.
Well, it's not 6 stories, it's 60 feet. I believe it's somewhat controlled by the special permit has a maximum amount that can be transferred from the Bethel site into the La Hermosa site. So
that would be
there's some so that the amount that there's a maximum limit which will leave some on the site, and then of course there's the envelope as defined by the special permit itself.
It would be helpful to get the calculations that would demonstrate that sufficient floor area remains to reach the 60-foot potential on the adjoining site.
Happy to provide that.
Other questions? And thank you to the applicant team.
Thank you.
We will follow our standard practice of beginning with speakers in opposition and then speakers in support. For those who weren't here at the beginning of the meeting, each speaker has 3 minutes in which to present testimony. We will begin with Bruce Jacobs.
Once again, Coalition of Rock, Bruce Jacobs, Coalition of Rockaway, supporter of New York State medical and religious freedom, U.S. Navy veteran, first responder, 30 years veteran. The only problem with this is, this project is that, first of all, it's not a developer. Second of all, a church running affordable housing, to me, I know the church is a good church, but a church running it. What about the other people? What about the Muslims? What about the Jewish people? What about the Protestant people? Are they going to have places of worship? Are they going to have places to go in these buildings? Or is it going to be strictly from the church? The areas is like they even have the logo of the church on there. If it's part of an affordable housing unit, it's supposed to not have anything to do with any kind of religion, race, creed, color, or whatever. You know, I'm in support of the church, but where's the developer on this? If you're going to give a project without a developer, because we don't even know what kind of jobs they're going to offer because this is a church. Who's the developer? When's this developer going to come? If you give them permission just like this, now you're hoping that a developer comes. Now, if the developer comes and he says, oh, I have to deal with the church, so I'm going to give whatever they want because I want this job. To me, there's a problem with that. Now, if, the places of worship, are there places of worship for all people in these buildings? Or is it going to just be the church running it? The idea of how this list is going to be put out, they say 50% for the neighborhood. Is the list going to be put out by HPD? Or is the list going to be out on a church? I don't understand how they're going to put it out. But until there's a developer, I really can't see and don't understand how something could be given a variance. And such large buildings, they say it don't affect those buildings. There are buildings on Fifth Avenue. What about those buildings? What about the people that live in those buildings? Are they included in this whole scheme, or are they going to be blocked out by these large buildings? The Coalition of the Rockaways likes to know that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Lasana Akachi, to be followed by Gloria Feliciano.
Good afternoon, Chair Lago and members of the Commission. As you stated, my name is Lasana Akachi, and I live in this community. I am a building service worker at FIT and have been a member of SIU Local 32BJ for 7 years. I'm here on behalf of my union and the 2,500 members who live and work in Community District 10 to testify in support of this project. La Hermosa Christian Church has been vocal about wanting to create good jobs that give working families dignity. We are pleased to report that La Hermosa has made a credible commitment to provide prevailing wage building service jobs for the future workers at this site. Since most of the property service jobs are typically filled by local members of the community, the new jobs created by this project will allow workers and their families to afford to live in this increasingly expensive community. We see this project as an example of responsible development with this creation of much-needed permanently affordable housing and the church's commitment to ensuring this project brings community benefits. 32BJ strongly supports the church's promise to use the proceeds from the project to provide arts education, and we believe this type of benefit is what our communities need from new development projects. At 32BJ, we know the important role La Hermosa plays in this neighborhood, and we are pleased to see their continued commitment to the community through its ministries and beyond. We are happy to stand with them in support throughout this process. We hope other developers take notice of this project and use it as an example and model of new developments and how they can benefit a community. We respectfully urge you to approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Akachi? Our next speaker will be Gloria Feliciano, to be followed by Alexa Smith.
Good afternoon. We are honored to be able to speak about our project for La Hermosa Christian Church. I'm a member of La Hermosa, and I work directly with this project and our professionals the entire time we've been working so far. Today, we want to bring in and present, these are letters from our community and church members and faith leaders of our community in support of our project. We also, you will see the red T-shirts represents a group of our community here to support our project also. La Hermosa has been in existence for 81 years. And since 1960, we have been in our same location. Our denomination is with us, backing us up also. We're not alone in this project. Besides our team, our denomination is fully aware and in support of what we're doing. In 2014, we were faced with the decision, what are we going to do with this building? The deterioration was continuous, and the church, the services that we can provide the community and our congregants keeps getting dwindling in time. And we had to make a decision. We called an engineering firm. They came in and let us know exactly what was needed, in which case it was definitely, we could not afford to maintain the building. And so even though we would have loved to keep what we have, we are not able to. We chose to continue in this building, in this location. We chose to maintain our facilities here in this location, which is our legacy that our people from the beginnings since 1960 have worked for us to be able to have this legacy. And we are excited also to be able to work with the community, especially with children and youth, and in doing so, to be able to partner with Manhattan School of Music, which is legitimately have grassroots in our community in Harlem, as we do, and trying to serve our young people to be able to have the benefits that below 96th Street, it's a given, but above 96th Street, it's not so much so. And we, as a church, in our mission, we want to be able to give not just hope to the church and say,
3 minutes goes by quickly.
I know, right? Thank you.
Questions for Ms. Feliciano? Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Knuckles. I'm sorry.
I would just simply say, as I'm sure the chair was going to, that if you have a written submission on your remarks, please submit it to the secretary.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Levin.
Yes, Ms. Feliciano, I don't know if you're the right person to ask this question, but you'll send me off to whoever the right person is.
Okay.
So we've heard a little bit from your advisors. I have to say you have a very impressive and experienced and talented group of advisors working with you. But I also know that these are very difficult and complicated development projects to pull off. how is it that the church decided to go through this part of the process without a development partner? And then what process are you going to use for selecting a development partner?
Okay. First of all, as I mentioned, in 2014, we made this decision. Then we dedicated ourselves for an entire year and a half to do research. We visited churches around Manhattan and Brooklyn and spoke to many pastors that had done construction projects in their churches, development projects, and some that were doing them at the present time, and we listened to everyone. In the meantime, we were also interviewing for a year and a half, interviewing developers. Sometimes in a week, we would interview 9, 10 developers, and this happened for a whole year and a half. And at the end of all of this, we sat down and we looked at all the research we had done. And more, we saw how going with a developer first, we would never get what we wanted. We would never get, they would always turn it around immediately once we started talks. I am sorry, you cannot afford this. We could give you the basement, or, and we have had this building for so many years, and there was no way the church was going to accept going into a basement. So then we started looking at what else can we do? How else can we go about it? And that's when then we started, we hired an advisor, and from that advisor, lawyers, and then we kept on, and that's how we came about doing this, which is very rare, and we are very aware, very complicated, but we have so many churches, especially in Harlem and in the Bronx, where the developers come in and offers the moon, and then immediately after you sign the contract, everything is gone off the table. So that's the reason why. And your next question?
The next question was, then ultimately, how are you going to select a developer? Let's say you are able to move this through the ULURP process, you get your special permit, the shape of the building.
Yes.
How are you going to find the right developer?
Okay. Jennifer?
I'm afraid we can't have prior speakers come back, but if you would submit a letter with that, it would be quite helpful.
Okay, but definitely there is a selection process. Everything is in place already, so that we already have a plan on how we're going to go ahead and do that.
Okay, so even though you're going to be presenting the developers with the kind of plan that they didn't want to engage with you about beforehand, you think that's going to be different?
It's going to be different in the sense that we are going through the process ourselves, so that they don't come in and decide what's going to happen and get it approved, and then we're stuck with the leftovers. So.
Commissioner Marin.
Ms. Feliciano, good afternoon, and thank you for your testimony. I just have a couple of questions relative to the development of the residential portion of the building. So my first question would be ownership. You do own the entire parcel of land underneath both buildings.
Yes, free and clear.
So why the decision to do market rate and not a totally affordable building?
Because our church services low-income and immigrant families. The only way the church will be able to survive, these families cannot afford a new building, and that we know for sure.
Correct.
We can't afford to upkeep the one we have now. So what we're wanting to do is be able to capitalize our only asset that we do have, and then make that work for us, to make sure that in the future this building is kept up by creating the endowments that will make sure that we are able to keep it up in perpetuity and be able to have the staff to work. That way, whatever income the church brings in, which would be very limited, would be for the mission of the church itself. But as far as the existence of community work in the church itself, that will be taken care of.
Oh, I do understand that, but I'm actually referring just to the residential portion of the development itself, and the decision to go, with some MAH units and the rest market rate. And so I'm just understanding that you do serve a lower income population,
right?
And it is a low income community. I think it would be it would serve the congregation and the community better if there were more affordable housing units. This is my own opinion, but I want to share it with you because I think that there should be consideration for more affordable housing within the building.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Edie.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to commend you and the church for the work you're doing. I mean, obviously what you're doing is rare, as you pointed out, but it does allow you to maintain some level of control that bringing a developer earlier in the process might not. So I wish you the best of luck going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Ms. Feliciano.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Alexa Smith, who will be followed by Dr. Peter Hetzel.
Hello, I'm Alexa Smith. I'm the Chief of Staff at Manhattan School of Music, and I'm here to proudly lend MSM support for this rezoning and the plan to revitalize La Hermosa Christian Church. As a longtime Harlem institution, we were very glad to receive the request to operate a community school in Harlem, only a couple blocks away from where our school began in 1918 as a community school for newly arriving immigrant children. We believe strongly that Harlem kids should have access to music and arts education, which they've been deprived of in many cases in their public schools. As someone who began their musical career in a public school orchestra, I can tell you this type of free access is vital to a child reaching their potential in any field. MSM, as you may know, is one of the foremost conservatories in the country. And we count Max Roach, Ron Carter, Catherine Malfitano, Charlie Puth, and Sheila Hensley as our illustrious graduates, but we also count Bernie Williams in that group. Proof that music education has never been just about becoming a professional musician. We can also help you win the World Series. We value a high-level appreciation for the arts and will offer new avenues to share cultural history, as that's something everyone deserves regardless of income. We're very proud to be a part of this project that will bring equity in education to Harlem. From practice rooms to a large performance hall, the school would provide spaces that inspire and classes that would open doors to musical canons from Mozart to Miles Davis, all for free. We're grateful to be a part of this project and extremely excited that will also include affordable housing and flexible community space for all of Harlem, all while preserving one of the most iconic Hispanic churches in New York. We strongly urge you to support this revitalization plan, which will bring much joy to so many.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Just let me ask, is Manhattan School of Music putting its own resources into this space, this proposed space?
So in terms of resources, right now—
Capital, I mean.
As far as we know, we are not, aside from providing our students as the main pool of teachers. We'll obviously include a lot of our illustrious faculty as part of that, and likely hold things like free concerts with our guest artists. Obviously, we're still in the development portion of what the program will shape up to be, but those are our main resources that we're dedicating right now.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Smith? Commissioner.
Ms. Smith, good afternoon. Have you, how have you solidified your, or memorialized your relationship with the church? Is there an MOU? What's the legal instrument that you've come to?
There's an MOU in place right now.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner.
And how does this relate to your current programming? Is this going to be a different student population or just an expansion of your other programs? I notice your focus is primarily on college and pre-college programs.
Yeah, right now, the main school serves undergrad, graduate, and doctoral students. On Saturdays, we do host a pre-college program, which is an all-day program for kids K through 12. In the summer, we have what we call MSM Summer, which is essentially a day camp. That's where most of our low-income kids do have an opportunity to come and work with our faculty. So right now, there isn't a component that would serve this this type of student, specifically the after-school times. So it's something we've been trying to figure out how we can do. We have some outreach programs that go during school hours into the schools and present programming, which also allows our students to get some experience in teaching and pedagogy. So for us, this really completes our educational circle of what we'd like to contribute to the community.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you.
Dr. Peter Hetzel, who will be followed by Angela Christina Paulino.
Vice Chair Knuckles, I would like to thank you for your long time commitment to Harlem. And having lived in Harlem with my wife, Sarah, and son, Tristan Troop, for 18 years, I can assure you and your fellow commissioners that this project at La Hermosa, the beautiful, the mother church of our denomination, Christian Church Disciples of Christ, is going to be a beacon of healing and hope in our beloved Harlem and New York City. My name is Reverend Dr. Peter Hetzel. I teach theology at New York Theological Seminary. I coordinate faith and justice at Fort Washington Collegiate Church, and I serve on Mayor de Blasio's Clergy Council, and I'm here today to speak in support of the La Hermosa proposal. I lost my job on 9/11 at Fidelity Investments. I went down and volunteered on Ground Zero, and I found a church home at La Hermosa, like so many others. And I want to thank Pastor Daniel Feliciano and his wife, Gloria, and all of the saints from La Hermosa and the community that are out in support of this proposal today. Basically, if we talk about urban planning from the perspective of faith communities, there's two options. Number one is shut it down. It's the church closed. We can't afford to play the game anymore. Here are the keys. We'll head to the burbs or out of the city. The second potential option is the developer-driven proposal, where they promise you the moon, but when it's over, you're still standing on the ground, and that's something. But the space for grace you got left is underground, unoutfitted, without the money to pay for it. So what do? I'm here today to tell you that there is a third way, which is a people of purpose paradigm for urban planning. And that's why I'm proud to be a New Yorker, because we have the possibility of actually achieving the beloved and the beautiful city that we dream of. This project, the La Hermosa project, is by and for the community. It's a true grassroots project. Married to Sarah Herman Hetzel, who went to Manhattan School of Music and graduated with her Master in Music in 2003 and her Master of Professional Studies in 2004. I can assure you, being married to an opera singer that sings the City Opera, I want my son, Tristan Troop, to go to this community music school so he can hear Figaro sing Cinque and a Love Supreme by train.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hetzel. Any questions for Dr. Hetzel? Thank you very much, sir. Angela Paulino.
That's a tough act to follow.
I don't want to go anymore, so I'm kidding. Can you hear me? Okay. Good afternoon. I'm here today to speak on how La Hermosa is integral to its community and not mutually exclusive of it. I'm an example of this. I grew up in the Schomburg Towers, and for me, growing up in the Schomburg Towers is exclusive with being part of La Hermosa. I've been going there since I was 7 years old. Currently 24, I know I'm pretty short, but yes. And I've been going with my grandma, and for me, it means a lot. At its peak, when I was younger, there was a youth program that had music lessons taught by the older youth members. It also had dance lessons and youth-led events. And for me, it created a safe space where I could go in my free time and have a voice in my community by participating in these activities. And because of that, I believe that Hermosa played an integral part in shaping who I am today, with having a passion and trying to make a career out of community engagement and being a positive influence in my community. And that speaks to La Hermosa's ability to empower others. On top of that, sorry, I'm a little nervous. Sorry. And that's why I also believe in the projected results of an expanded music program with the Harlem School of Music. I think it would be an amazing impact for students who deserve much more from their community. And aside from giving me this safe space and providing me with things, La Hermosa also taught me how to give back to my community. The youth participated in food pantries and participated in clothing drives, and I would really love to see La Hermosa continue doing that, because I saw the way it empowered these people who were most vulnerable in Harlem. So I believe that by saving La Hermosa, you would also be saving the people who were vulnerable in Harlem, which would be the youth, the elder population, its members, and as well as the homeless and the immigrant community, as La Hermosa has mentioned. And that's why I am in support of La Hermosa, and thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Paulino?
No? Okay, great. Wow.
Thank you. Pastor Felix Gross. Pastor Felix Gross.
Right here.
Thank you.
Blessings to all. It's a privilege to be standing here before every one of you that is willing to listen to my joy about this project. I was actually a youth before I became a pastor. I've been pastoring since 1979 in the Bronx, in the South Bronx. Proudly so, by God's grace, till today. We are actually in a building project. Also, we had two properties, two pieces of land that we gave up, we sold, in order to get our church built at the cost of the properties. And it seemed like a dream come true, and it has become a nightmare. So I applaud La Hermosa for going about it a different way. I wish I could turn the clock back and imitate or do more study as they have done, so that I don't end up today almost suffering from diabetes, asthma, everything, because since the project started in 2015 that we sold our property, we seem to have plans that look so perfect. And then eventually it has been like, oh, we're not in charge of building your stage. That's your part. That's your part. Oh, we don't have anything to do with the baptistry. You are now a community facility, so that you could only sit 175 instead of 210, because we have to have the wide aisles for the wheelchairs and the ramps and everything else. So it was things that we discovered as we went along that we were never told before. And we looked for a developer that we thought was ideal after going through like 5 of them. So I just want to backtrack and say, La Hermosa, with their trajectory of being a community center, was an inspiration for me to become a pastor. They were so open. All of our sister churches in all of New York, Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, Bronx, we used to meet at La Hermosa for many events, and always found an open arms, beautiful people that were ready to serve us. Our youth of my church in the Bronx didn't have enough space, so their multi-purpose room had basketball rims. That was our gym, and we used to once a week go play basketball there. So many stories I could tell you. I came with my van to fill up from their food pantry in order to get food in our church. They gave us that opportunity. And it's just one thing I could tell you after another, that they are an inspiration, and they have helped so many people along the way. And like myself, a minister, they also are ministers today because of La Hermosa.
Thank you, sir.
God bless.
Thank you. Questions for Pastor Gross? Thank you. Pastor Hugo Monroig. I hope I pronounced that right. Thank you. to be followed by Pastor Ralph Rodriguez.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for hearing us. I'm Pastor Hugo Monroy from La Segunda. And we are called La Segunda because La Hermosa is La Primera, the first one. So that right there tells you that they've been in business. We still have members at La Segunda who were part of La Hermosa. Because they came to do missions there and to support the community, the Spanish community that was there. Back in the day, it was community only English from people from all over the place. So Hispanic communities in the 40s started moving there, and La Hermosa moved some of the members to help the Spanish church that was growing up to today. So I'm looking forward for you to give green light to this project and have still a place where all the pastors in the community get together. That's a very central place, very accessible by transportation. La Segunda is not. We have a space, but it's not that accessible as it is La Hermosa. And we also hope that the community continues to serve. They've been serving for 81 years. We look forward for next 100 together serving the city. I've been in 2 churches who were part of developing programs. Both of them, one not too bad, but the other a complete nightmare. So also I'm rooting for this third wave, that, hey, we can make things happen. Among the churches and the denomination, we have experts also who can do these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you, sir. Ralph Rodriguez.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Reverend Ralph Rodriguez, and I serve as an associate pastor at Manhattan Grace Tabernacle, a Christian non-denominational church for all. We've been together about 30 years, and we have no affiliation with La Hermosa Christian Church and the Disciples of Christ. However, we do serve the same God. We are joined together by our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And so the reason I am here is I have the same T-shirt. I am lending my support behind this project, this awesome project. We currently meet in a public school in 115 East 115th Street and 3rd Avenue, between 3rd Avenue and Lexington Avenue. And we lease space there, of course. And being in a public school, though we're grateful to be there, there are many restrictions because, of course, there's a school that's there. So we have to get permits every time we meet. But moreover, the reason we support La Hermosa is they're doing, obviously, a very unique project. We've had the privilege and the opportunity to have office space in their location there on 5 West 110th Street. We've benefited from leasing space from them, being able to use the parking lot there. And we've also held various meetings when we've not been able to get permits at the school location. So we've done marriage seminars, we've done young adult activities, we've done baptisms, we've done weddings at La Hermosa Christian Church. So we certainly appreciate what they do there. We know they're community-minded, and there's not a friction in the fact that we're not of the same denomination. They just, the Pastor Daniel and Gloria have been amazing in allowing us to use the facilities when they're available to us. So certainly because of that and so many other reasons, we do lend our support. We're a 500-member church in East Harlem presently, and of course that's not what we get on a weekly basis to show up at services, but that's a whole nother story. So we trust that you, commissioners, will help lend your support to this awesome and wonderful project. Any questions?
Questions for Pastor Rodriguez? Thank you.
Thank you kindly.
Our next speaker will be Miriam Martinez, to be followed by Reverend Victor Melendez.
Good afternoon. My name is Reverend Miriam Martinez. I'm an ordained minister of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. And for the Almosa, I am what is called the moderator, the person that is between the pastor and the congregation and makes sure that everything functions in an orderly manner. I could attest, as Peter said, Peter and I are very associated. We are activists. We have served in 7/11, September 11, we have served in the 2 aircrafts that went down in major hurricanes as chaplains. We bring to La Hermosa special expertise. When I got there some years ago, I saw La Hermosa very active. In the actual world, I was a social worker, supervisor for Catholic Charities for 30 years, involved with community services, making sure that those services went where they were supposed to. And La Hermosa, like Peter said, is a church-based community church. We live not only for the church, but also for the community. And I know that La Hermosa is an honorable church. It has pulled through with all the services to the community, for the homeless, for the elderly, for the children, for the young people. La Hermosa is an asset to the community where it stands and is. And it will be a greater asset to the community if this project is pulled through. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Martinez. Questions? Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is Reverend Victor Melendez.
Good afternoon. I'm the Reverend Victor Melendez, Senior Pastor of Bethel Christian Temple. We're the church that is joined to La Hermosa Christian Church. And I am here together along with my wife and also the secretary of the church, Humberto Santana. And we are representing our church in this proposal that is before you. We are in full support of this proposal. And we are just very honored to be a part of it. We have been in existence for over 88 years in our community. We share roots with La Hermosa. La Hermosa's founder came out of our same roots. And we're very proud of the process that they've taken, in the sense of taking the project on their own, us also being aware and knowing of other churches in the community that have been taken advantage. We see the position that they've taken is to take the upper hand and to benefit the church instead of benefiting the developers. And so we're in full support. We, along as La Hermosa Church, we have serviced also our community for many decades, and we've seen also the work firsthand that La Hermosa has done for our community. They have serviced in many ways. They've also been a pillar and also a place of refuge for our community. And we're very proud of the work that they've been done, and we are assured that they will continue that work and maybe even extend it furthermore with the capital that they will be able to obtain. In addition to them being rezoned and us also being able to capitalize on that, we plan to also continue to service our community and provide programs for the much needed support that our young people have in our community. We understand the much need that there is, and we believe that La Hermosa will continue to do their service, provide the service that our community needs, and basically, we're here just to support all of their work.
Thank you, Reverend Melendez. Any questions? Commissioner Edie.
Hi, thank you. Do you have any plans for your church going forward in terms of the changing, doing anything with the physical structure with it, of the building?
We do. We are also in planning to redevelop our structure. Our building is in dire need of repairs, which has also stumped us in being able to provide the programming that we desire to do so for our community. But we do also want to create programs, as I said, for our much-needed community, the kids. We have King Projects, Martin Luther King Projects. It's a block away. And we understand that these kids need programs to be able to help them. So we also do plan to redevelop our location. To what extent? That's something that we're still in the planning.
Other questions? Thank you, Reverend. If anyone else who is here and has not yet spoken would be interested in doing so, please come forward now. The public hearing is closed. And Mr. Secretary, any other matter before the commission?
There is not.
Okay, so this public meeting has ended. Thank you.